Elias awoke to the scent of old parchment and ozone. His head throbbed with a dull ache, memories swimming in a chaotic soup, strategic briefings, tactical maps, the cold steel of a command center. Then warmth, soft sheets, the distant chime of bells. He opened his eyes to a vaulted ceiling of polished oak, intricate carvings of mythical beasts winding across the beams. Morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the stone floor. This wasn't his sterile office. This was an Earth. A translucent blue screen materialized before him, hovering in the air with crisp, glowing text. System notification. User, Elias Viridian. Status, reincarnated. Role, appraisal teacher. Star rating, 0 out of 5. Assignment, Defective Class, Year 1. Location, Ethelgard Academy of Arcane Arts. Elias sat up slowly, the memories slotting into place. He'd been a top strategist for a global security firm, analyzing threats and orchestrating operations. Then, a flash of light, a sensation of falling, and now this. A magical academy. A teacher. With 0 stars. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his body feeling unfamiliar yet functional. A simple robe hung on a nearby chair, embroidered with the academy's crest, a phoenix encircled by runes. As he dressed, he noticed a small mirror on the wall. The face staring back was younger than he remembered, perhaps in his late 20s, with sharp gray eyes and dark hair that fell just above his shoulders. There was a weariness in those eyes, though, a veteran's gaze in a novice's body. A knock at the door. Teacher Elias? The headmaster requests your presence in the East Wing. Your class begins in an hour. The voice was polite but distant. Elias straightened his robe and opened the door to find a young attendant in academy livery, avoiding eye contact. 0-star teachers, it seemed, didn't merit much respect. The East Wing was a stark contrast to the grandeur of the main halls. Here, the corridors were narrower, the stone walls unadorned save for patches of damp. Faint sounds of laughter and spell-casting echoed from distant classrooms, but this area felt abandoned. Elias followed the attendant to a door marked Defective Classroom, authorized personnel only. Inside, the room was sparse. A dozen wooden desks, scarred and mismatched. A chalkboard with faint, half-erased diagrams. Windows that looked out onto a neglected courtyard, weeds pushing through cracked flagstones. And at the desks, his students. There were 8 of them, ranging from teenagers to young adults, all wearing the same plain gray uniforms without the decorative trim of other classes. They sat in silence, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. Elias felt a pang of recognition. He'd seen that look before, in soldiers deemed unfit for duty. The discarded. He walked to the front of the room, the attendant slipping away without a word. Good morning, Elias said, his voice steady. I'm Teacher Elias. I'll be your appraisal instructor. A few glanced up, curiosity flickering in their eyes before fading back into resignation. One boy, with tousled red hair and freckles, mumbled, another one? They never last. Elias ignored the comment. Let's start with introductions. Your names and your registered skills. He went around the room. Leo, the red-haired boy, sighed. Some insult. F tier. I can make about a teaspoon appear per day. It's great for seasoning, I guess. A few snickers from the others, but they were hollow, self-deprecating. Maya, a girl with sharp features and dark hair tied in a practical bun, spoke next. Telekinesis, spoons. F tier. I can move spoons. Only spoons. And only up to 10 feet away. She demonstrated, focusing on a rusty spoon on her desk. It wobbled into the air, then clattered down. Others followed. A boy who could create minor illusion of a flickering candlelight. A girl with water manipulation that produced a few drops. A tall youth with enhanced strength that let him lift an extra pound. Each skill was laughably weak, each tier stamped with a glaring F. Elias listened, his strategist's mind already cataloging. Limited output, specific constraints, no combat applicability. On paper, they were useless, but something nagged at him. The way Leo's fingers twitched when he summoned salt, as if grasping at something larger. The faint shimmer around Maya's spoon, almost like a distortion in the air. It was subtle, but Elias had spent years reading micro-expressions and environmental cues. These weren't just weak skills, they felt incomplete. The lesson was a farce. Elias tried to explain basic appraisal theory, assessing mana flow and skill synergy, but the students barely responded. They'd heard it all before. Halfway through, the door slammed open. 3 students in pristine blue uniforms strode in, their robes edged with silver thread. The leader, a handsome boy with an arrogant smirk, scanned the room. "Ah, the defectives. Practicing your whatever it is you do." Leo flushed. "Get out, Alistair. We're in class." Alistair laughed. "Class. This is where skills come to die." He gestured to his companions. "We're from the Celestial class. A-tier skills only. Thought we'd see if any of you had improved. But I see you're still summoning condiments." He snapped his fingers, and a gust of wind swept through the room, scattering papers and knocking a desk over. Maya's spoon skittered across the floor. The defective students shrank back, humiliation burning in their eyes. Elias stepped forward. "That's enough. Leave." Alistair eyed him. "The 0-star teacher? Heard about you. No appraisal skill, right? Just a theoretical. Must be why they stuck you with these failures." Elias kept his voice calm, the strategist in him assessing. 3 opponents, likely with combat-oriented skills, confident to the point of recklessness. "Your behavior is a violation of Academy Code. I suggest you depart before I report it." "Report?" Alistair sneered. "Who'd listen to you?" He raised a hand, mana coalescing into a small, crackling orb of lightning. "Maybe a demonstration will show your class what real power looks like." He aimed the orb at Leo, who flinched, raising his hands defensively. In that moment, Elias felt a sudden, sharp pain behind his eyes. The world seemed to stutter, colors bleeding at the edges. And then, his vision changed. Overlaid on reality, glowing text appeared around each person. For Alistair, lightning bolt, A-tier, mana efficiency, 85%. For his companions, similar readouts. But when he looked at his own students, the text was different. Flickering, corrupted, as if struggling to display. Over Leo, besides summon salt, F-tier, new words pulsed in crimson, glitch detected. Primordial authority fragment, ocean dominion, locked, integrity 0.001%. Over Maya, telekinesis, spoons, F-tier, and glitch detected. Primordial authority fragment, conceptual utensil manipulation, locked, integrity 0.0008%. Over the others, similar fragments, ***, light manipulation, ***, hydrokinesis, kinetic amplification, all tagged as glitches, all labeled as primordial authorities. The system was trying to hide them, masking them as worthless F-tier skills. Elias's breath caught. Primordial authorities? Fragments of world-shaping powers? These weren't defective students. They were walking anomalies, their abilities so vast the system had to cripple them into obscurity. Ticking time bombs, indeed. Alistair released the lightning orb. Time seemed to slow. Elias moved on instinct, shoving Leo aside. The orb struck the wall, scorching the stone. The defective students gasped, scrambling back. "Enough!" Elias's voice cut through the room, sharp with command. He fixed Alistair with a stare, the gray eyes now cold and calculating. "You've made your point. Now leave, or I will ensure the headmaster hears of this in detail." Something in his tone gave even Alistair pause. The arrogance wavered, replaced by uncertainty. With a final scoff, he turned. "Fine. Enjoy your salt and spoons." He and his companions left, the door swinging shut behind them. Silence descended, broken only by the ragged breathing of the students. Leo picked himself up, dusting off his uniform. "Thanks," he muttered, not meeting Elias's eyes. Elias looked at each of them. The shame, the fear, the buried spark of something more. His true appraisers' eye still active. He saw the glitches pulsing beneath their skins, dormant but immense. This changed everything. He walked to the chalkboard, erasing the old diagrams with a swift motion. "Forget what just happened," he said, his voice low but intense. "Forget what the system tells you. Your skills aren't F-tier. They're something else. Something the Academy doesn't understand." Maya frowned. "What do you mean?" Elias turned, meeting their confused gazes. "I mean you're not defective. You're suppressed. Your abilities are fragments of powers that could shape reality, but they've been locked away, labeled as useless to keep them hidden." He tapped his temple. "I have a way to see it. A true appraisal. Leo's eyes widened. You can see more? Yes. And if what I'm seeing is correct, with training, you could become more powerful than any A-tier in this academy. Elias let the words hang, watching the disbelief war with a fragile hope in their expressions. But it won't be easy. The system doesn't want these glitches active. We'll have to work in secret, push beyond what's considered possible. Are you willing to try? For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Maya straightened, her jaw set. I'm tired of being a joke. One by one, the others nodded, a flicker of determination igniting in their eyes. Elias allowed a small, grim smile. Good. Starting tomorrow, we begin real training. Not appraisal theory, practical application. We'll unlock what's been hidden. As he spoke, a sudden, searing pain lanced through his skull. The blue system interface flashed violently before his eyes, text scrolling too fast to read. Then, a final, glaring alert. Unauthorized appraisal detected. Correction imminent. Asterisk, asterisk. The words burned into his vision before fading, leaving a phantom ache. Elias clenched his fists, the room swimming back into focus. His students were watching him, unaware of the warning. Correction imminent. The system knew, and it was coming. He took a deep breath, pushing the fear down. Class dismissed, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Rest well. Tomorrow, we change everything. The students filed out, whispers already beginning. Elias stood alone in the empty classroom, the afternoon light casting long shadows. Outside, the academy bells chimed, marking the hour. In the quiet, his mind raced, strategies, risks, the enormity of what he'd discovered. He had a class of glitched, primordial fragments, and a system that wanted them erased. The game was on, and Elias Viridian, former strategist, zero-star teacher, was all in. But first, he had to survive whatever correction meant. And he had a feeling it wouldn't be gentle. The morning after the system's warning, Elias stood before the cracked mirror in his cramped teacher's quarters. The reflection showed a man in his late 20s with tired eyes that now held a secret fire. The system interface in his peripheral vision still flickered with the ominous message from last night. Unauthorized appraisal detected. Correction imminent. He'd dismissed it, but it lingered like a ghost in the machine. Correction, he muttered to the empty room. We'll see about that. He dressed in the standard teacher's robes, plain gray with a single silver thread denoting his zero-star rank. The fabric felt coarse against his skin, a constant reminder of his low status. But as he fastened the clasp, his true appraiser's eye activated unbidden, showing him the hidden properties of the robe. Material, low-grade mana weave. Hidden trait, monitoring enchantment, active. Elias's lips tightened. They were watching him already. The Defective Class's training ground was a forgotten corner of Ethelgard Academy, a sunken courtyard surrounded by crumbling stone walls overgrown with ivy. Moss crept between the flagstones, and the air smelled of damp earth and neglect. When Elias arrived, his 6 students were already there, huddled together like frightened animals. Leo, the salt summoner, was nervously rubbing his hands together, tiny salt crystals forming and dissolving on his palms. Maya sat cross-legged on a broken bench, staring intently at a spoon she'd brought from the dining hall. The others, Kale with Create Minor Illusion, Sarah with Grow Mold, Ren with Whisper to Insects, and Lila with Dull Blade Enhancement, clustered nearby, their postures slumped with resignation. Good morning, Elias said, his voice cutting through the quiet. They flinched as one. Maya nearly dropped her spoon. Relax, Elias continued, stepping into the center of the courtyard. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to teach you something no one else in this academy can. Leo looked up, skepticism warring with desperate hope in his eyes. Teach us what? How to be better punching bags. A few of the others chuckled bitterly. Elias smiled, a sharp, knowing expression. No, how to become the most dangerous people in this academy. He activated his true appraiser's eye. The world shifted, overlaying with shimmering text and data streams. He focused on Leo first. Name, Leo Vance. Skill, Summon Salt, F tier. System description, creates small quantities of sodium chloride for culinary or minor cleaning purposes. Glitch detected, Primordial Authority Fragment. Hidden text, Ocean Dominion, incomplete. Current manifestation, Salt Generation. True potential, control over desiccation, mineral composition, and aqueous systems. Warning, system suppression at 87% efficiency. Leo, Elias said, walking closer. Summon salt for me. Right here. Leo sighed, a familiar defeat in the sound. He raised a hand, and a handful of white crystals materialized above his palm, sprinkling down to the mossy stones. See? Useless. Is it? Elias crouched, picking up a few grains. Look closer. He focused his eye, and the hidden text expanded. Salt crystals, active. Subtle moisture absorption detected from immediate environment. 0.3% humidity reduction per minute. Elias held up the crystals to the morning light. These aren't just salt, Leo. They're drinking the air. Leo blinked. What? Your salt pulls moisture from the atmosphere. It's a tiny effect now, but what if you concentrated it? What if you made more? For the first time, Leo's expression shifted from apathy to curiosity. He summoned another handful, this time focusing intently. The crystals formed slower, larger, with faint geometric patterns. Elias's eye showed the humidity drop more sharply, 0.7% per minute. Good, Elias said. Now try to shape it. Not just grains, make a structure. Leo's brow furrowed in concentration. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as he extended both hands. The salt in the air coalesced, swirling into a miniature pyramid that hovered between his palms. The moss beneath it began to brown at the edges. Maya gasped. Leo, you're drying out the moss. Elias nodded, satisfaction warming his chest. Exactly. That's not an F-tier skill. That's the beginning of desert creation. He turned to the others. Each of you has something similar hidden. The system calls your skills defective because it can't comprehend their true nature. But I can see it. He moved to Maya next. Her spoon lay on the bench, ordinary stainless steel. His eye activated. Name, Maya Thorn. Skill, telekinesis, spoons, F-tier. System description, allows limited telekinetic control over utensils classified as spoons. Maximum weight, 500 grams. Glitch detected, primordial authority fragment. Hidden text, conceptual utensil manipulation, incomplete. Current manifestation, spoon telekinesis. True potential, warping of utensil-shaped concepts in reality, including spatial relationships, material properties, and symbolic functions. Warning, system suppression at 92% efficiency. Maya, Elias said gently. Pick up the spoon. She did, using her telekinesis to float it a few inches above her hand. It wobbled unsteadily. Now, Elias said, don't just move it. Feel it. What is a spoon really? Maya frowned. It's a tool. For eating. And what does it do? It holds things. Transfers things from bowl to mouth. Exactly. It's a vessel. A conduit. Elias pointed to a puddle of rainwater nearby. Can you make the spoon move that water? Maya focused, her eyes narrowing. The spoon dipped toward the puddle, but nothing happened. It's not designed for that, she said, frustration creeping into her voice. Forget design, Elias insisted. Think function. A spoon transfers. So transfer that water. Maya took a deep breath. The spoon trembled in the air. Suddenly, a droplet of water peeled away from the puddle and floated toward the spoon's bowl, hovering just above it. Then another, and another. Elias's eye flashed. Conceptual override detected. Utensil function expansion. Water manipulation via symbolic association. You're not just moving the spoon, Elias said, his voice low with awe. You're convincing reality that the spoon should move the water. Maya's eyes widened as a dozen droplets orbited the spoon like tiny moons. I didn't know I could do this. For the next hour, Elias worked with each student. Kale's create minor illusion wasn't just light tricks. When Elias guided him, the illusions gained slight solidity, able to push a leaf or create a faint chill. Sarah's mold grew not just on surfaces, but began secreting a weak paralytic agent. Ren's insect whispers evolved into basic command prompts, making ants form simple patterns. Lila's dull blade enhancement, when applied to a stick, made it slice through a thick vine with surprising ease. They were small steps, but for students who'd been told their powers were worthless, they were revolutions. This is incredible, Leo said, maintaining a salt crystal the size of his fist that was slowly leaching moisture from a patch of ivy. I never thought. None of us did, Maya interrupted, her spoon now floating steadily with a small orb of water contained within its bowl. But why can you see this, Professor Elias? Why can't the system? Elias hesitated. He couldn't reveal everything, not yet. The system has limitations. It categorizes things neatly, but some abilities don't fit into boxes. My own skill lets me see past those categories. It was a half-truth, but it satisfied them for now. Unseen by the class, a figure watched from a high window in the adjacent divination tower. Professor Arcturus, a 3-star elemental mage with a hawkish face and perpetually disapproving expression, observed through a scrying orb. He saw Leo's salt crystals browning the vegetation, Maya's water manipulation, the other small breakthroughs. Wasteful, he muttered to himself. Training defects. Squandering academy resources on hopeless cases. He made a note on a crystal slate. Elias, 0-star appraisal teacher, engaging in unauthorized training methods with defective class. Activities include encouraging dangerous skill misuse and potential property damage. Recommend immediate intervention. Arcturus sent the message with a flick of his wrist, the crystal dissolving into light. Then he continued watching, a smug smile on his lips. 2 days later, Elias received the summons. He was in the courtyard again, helping Maya practice bending the spoon's shape. She'd progressed to warping its metal slightly, making the handle curve like a question mark. Elias's, I showed the progress. Conceptual manipulation rank, 0.1. Spatial warping capacity, minimal but increasing. A courier, a first-year student with nervous eyes, approached, holding a sealed scroll. Professor Elias? From Headmaster Valerius. Elias took the scroll. The wax seal bore the Academy's crest, a tower surrounded by swirling mana currents. He broke it and read. The words were formal, cold. By order of Headmaster Valerius, you are hereby summoned to a disciplinary review regarding your teaching methods with Class 7D, Defective. Concerns have been raised about resource mismanagement and unauthorized skill development. Your presence is required tomorrow at noon in the Headmaster's chambers. Failure to appear will result in immediate suspension. Elias's hands tightened on the parchment. He looked up at his students, who had stopped their exercises to watch. Trouble? Leo asked, his salt crystal dissolving in his anxiety. Nothing we can't handle, Elias said, forcing calm into his voice. But inside his mind raced. They'd been reported. Probably Arcturus. He'd noticed the man's occasional glances from the tower. Maya floated her spoon down to her hand. What do? We keep training, Elias said firmly. Only harder. He spent the rest of the afternoon pushing them further. Leo created a salt ring that dehydrated a small circle of ground completely, leaving cracked earth. Maya managed to warp 2 spoons into interlocking shapes without touching them. The others made similar, tiny breakthroughs. But as the sun set, Elias felt the weight of the summons like a physical thing. The system alert still flickered occasionally, a reminder that he was being monitored. And now the Academy itself was taking notice. That evening, in his quarters, Elias prepared. He reviewed everything he knew about Headmaster Valerius, a 5-star archmage, traditionalist, fiercely protective of the Academy's reputation. The man would see the defective class as a stain on Ethelgard's prestige. Expulsion wouldn't just be a threat, it would be a likely outcome. Unless Elias could convince him otherwise. He activated his true appraiser's eye, looking at his own reflection again. The system interface flickered, and for a moment, he saw past it. Glimpses of corrupted code, hidden pathways, the ghostly architecture of the suppression mechanisms keeping his students' powers in check. His eye was a glitch too, he realized. One the system hadn't fully accounted for. Tomorrow, he whispered to the darkroom. Tomorrow, we either rise or fall. He thought of Leo's drying salt, Maya's bending spoons, the small sparks of hope in his students' eyes. They weren't defects. They were seeds of something vast and terrible and beautiful. And he would not let the Academy crush them. As he lay down to sleep, the system alert flashed one last time. Disciplinary proceedings logged. Outcome probability, 89% unfavorable. Recommendation, cease anomalous activities. Elias closed his eyes, ignoring it. In the darkness, he began to plan his defense. The next morning, Elias dressed with care. Same gray robes, but he stood straighter. When he met his students in the courtyard, they were waiting silently. Whatever happens, Leo said. Thank you for seeing us. The others nodded. Maya held her warped spoon like a talisman. Elias felt a lump in his throat. Stay here. Practice. I'll be back. He turned and walked toward the main academy building, the summon scroll clutched in his hand. The path led through manicured gardens where elite students practiced flashy spells, fireballs, lightning arcs, force barriers. They glanced at him, some with pity, most with disdain. Elias kept his eyes forward. The headmaster's tower loomed ahead, its spire piercing the sky. The disciplinary hearing awaited, and with it, the threat that had hung over them since the first day, the possible expulsion of his entire class. He climbed the marble steps, each one feeling heavier than the last. At the massive oak doors, he paused, taking a deep breath. His true appraiser's eye activated on its own, showing him the hidden enchantments on the door, wards, monitoring spells, truth-seeker runes. Then he pushed the doors open and stepped into the lion's den. The disciplinary hearing chamber of the Arcane Academy was a place designed to intimidate. Elias stood at its center, the polished obsidian floor reflecting the cold light of mana crystals embedded in the vaulted ceiling. Around him, in tiered seats of dark wood, sat the Academy's elite teachers, a dozen faces etched with varying degrees of disdain, boredom, or outright hostility. At the highest point of the semicircular arrangement, Headmaster Valerius presided, his silver beard trimmed to a sharp point that seemed to accuse Elias by its mere existence. Elias could feel the weight of their gazes. In his previous life as a strategist, he'd faced boardrooms full of corporate sharks, but this was different. Here, the stakes weren't profits, they were lives. The lives of his students, who waited outside the chamber doors, likely trembling in the corridor. He straightened his simple teacher's robe, a stark contrast to the embroidered vestments of the other faculty. Elias Thorne, Headmaster Valerius began, his voice echoing in the chamber's acoustics. You have been summoned to answer for the misuse of Academy resources and the willful neglect of your pedagogical duties. Professor Arcturus has provided testimony that you have been conducting unconventional training with the defective class. From the front row, Professor Arcturus, a man with hawkish features and robes adorned with golden stars denoting his 5-star appraisal rank, leaned forward. Unconventional is too kind, Headmaster. I witnessed him having Leo summon salt crystals for hours on end. Salt. While the other classes practice combat spells and mana manipulation, he wastes time on parlor tricks. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled teachers. Elias kept his expression neutral, but his mind raced. He'd expected this. After Arcturus had spied on them 2 days prior, he'd known a confrontation was inevitable. What he hadn't anticipated was how quickly Valerius had called this hearing, or how many would attend. I am not neglecting my duties, Elias said, his voice steady. I am fulfilling them in the only way that matters, by helping my students understand their abilities. Abilities, scoffed a woman with fiery red hair. Professor Ignia, the pyromancy instructor. You mean those F-tier jokes the system assigned them? Summon salt. Telekinesis, spoons. These aren't abilities, they're glitches. Flaws. The system has clearly malfunctioned in their cases, and the Academy's mercy in keeping them enrolled is generosity enough. Elias felt a familiar heat rise in his chest. In his past life, he'd seen too many talented people dismissed because they didn't fit the mold. Here, it was the same, just with magic and a rigid ranking system. He took a slow breath, activating his true appraiser's eye subtly. The world shifted, overlays of text appearing around the teachers. Most showed standard skill descriptions, but as his gaze swept the room, he caught flickers, tiny, almost imperceptible glitches in their own system interfaces. A crack in Ignia's Inferno Control description, a stutter in Arcturus's analytical gaze. Even the headmaster's administrative authority had a faint corruption at its edges. The system was flawed for everyone, but only his students' flaws were deemed unacceptable. My students' skills are not jokes, Elias said, raising his voice slightly. They are misunderstood. The system's appraisal is incomplete. With proper guidance. Proper guidance would involve transferring them to remedial courses or encouraging them to withdraw. Interrupted a burly man with arms like tree trunks. Professor Boulder, the earth magic instructor. You're giving them false hope, Thorne. They'll never be anything but defective. The word hung in the air, sharp and final. Elias clenched his fists. He thought of Leo, who'd spent yesterday afternoon focusing until sweat dripped from his brow, trying to pull moisture from the air with his salt. Of Maya, who'd bent a spoon so precisely it could have been a sculptor's tool. Of all the others, each with a glimmer of something greater hidden beneath the F-tier label. False hope, Elias said, stepping forward. The movement drew every eye. You call it false hope when a student shows improvement? When they push past what the system tells them they are. My class may not have flashy fireballs or earth-shaking tremors, but they have potential, and I will not abandon them to your dismissal. Headmaster Valerius steepled his fingers. Your passion is noted, Elias, but passion does not change facts. The system has ranked them at the bottom for a reason. Professor Arcturus reports that your training has yielded no measurable results. The Academy cannot allocate resources based on sentiment. Then measure this, Elias shot back. Give us a chance to demonstrate. A practical test. Let my students show what they can do. Arcturus laughed, a dry, humorless sound. A practical test? With what? A cooking competition? Perhaps they can season a stew while real mages defend the Academy. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Elias felt his jaw tighten. He was about to retort when a low rumble shook the floor. The mana crystals in the ceiling flickered. A distant scream pierced the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of shattering stone. Everyone froze. Headmaster Valerius stood abruptly. What was that? A young attendant burst through the chamber doors, his face pale. Headmaster, there's been a dungeon breach in the eastern training grounds. A swarm of rock crawlers has emerged. Panic flashed across the teachers' faces. Rock crawlers were low-level monsters, barely a threat to trained mages, but they were numerous and aggressive. In the training grounds, where novice students practiced, Elias's blood ran cold. His students were out there. Leo, Maya, all of them. They'd been waiting in the courtyard adjacent to the training grounds for the hearing's outcome. Seal the area, Valerius commanded. Mobilize the elite classes for containment. But as the teachers scrambled, Elias was already moving. He shoved past Arcturus, ignoring the man's indignant shout, and sprinted for the doors. The corridor outside was chaos, students running, alarms blaring through magical speakers. He pushed through the crowd, his heart hammering. The eastern training grounds were just beyond the main courtyard, separated by a low wall. When he burst outside, the scene was worse than he'd imagined. Dozens of rock crawlers, crab-like creatures with stone carapaces and jagged pincers, scurried across the training grounds, snapping at fleeing students. The elite classes, those with combat-ready skills, had formed a loose perimeter, but they were hesitating. Their teachers weren't here to guide them, and the swarm was spreading. And there, backed against the courtyard wall, was his defective class. Leo stood in front, trembling, with Maya beside him, her hands outstretched as if to push the monsters away with sheer will. The other students, Arya with her minor illusion, Ben with his grow moss, clustered behind them, faces white with terror. A rock crawler skittered toward Leo, its pincers clicking. One of the elite students, a boy with flame dart, shot a weak fireball that bounced off its carapace. The monster didn't even slow. Leo, Elias shouted, but his voice was lost in the din. Leo's eyes were wide, fixed on the approaching creature. He was muttering something, his hands shaking as he tried to summon salt. A tiny pile of crystals formed at his feet, useless against stone. The rock crawler lunged. And then, something broke in Leo. Elias saw it, a flash of raw, panicked energy. Leo screamed, not in fear, but in desperation, and threw his hands forward. Not to summon salt, but to reject, to push away the terror that had haunted him every day as the Academy's laughingstock. The air around Leo shimmered. A wave of white erupted from his palms, not just salt, but a fine, crystalline dust that spread in a cloud. It touched the rock crawler, and the creature froze. Its stony shell cracked, not from impact, but from within. A desiccated, papery sound filled the air as the monster crumbled to dust, its moisture sucked away in an instant. The cloud spread, washing over the swarm. Rock crawlers screeched as their bodies dried out, collapsing into piles of brittle fragments. In seconds, the entire swarm was gone, reduced to nothing but dust and silence. The training grounds fell still. The elite students stared, mouths agape. The few remaining teachers who'd followed Elias out halted in their tracks. Leo stood panting, looking at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. The salt dust settled around him like snow. Elias activated his true Appraiser's eye. Text flickered above Leo. Summon Salt, Desert Dominion, Rank 1. Glitch amplified. Primordial Authority Fragment. Ocean/Desert Polarity, unlocked. Warning, system correction pending. He felt a surge of triumph, sharp and fierce. This was it, the proof. But as he stepped forward, Headmaster Valerius's voice cut through the quiet. What was that? Valerius demanded, striding into the courtyard. His eyes were fixed on Leo, then on Elias. That was no F-tier skill. It was his skill, Elias said, moving to stand beside Leo. The boy was shaking, but there was a new light in his eyes, a dawning realization of power. Just properly understood. Understood. Arcturus pushed forward, his face twisted with suspicion. That was unnatural. No student, especially not a defective, should be able to wipe out a swarm like that. You've done something, Thorn. Cheated. Used forbidden artifacts or tampered with the system. I did nothing but teach him, Elias said, his voice low. Look at him. He's as shocked as you are. And it was true. Leo was staring at the dust that had been monsters, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Maya touched his arm, her own hands still trembling. Headmaster Valerius's gaze swept from Leo to Elias, then to the remains of the rock crawlers. This changes nothing about the hearing, he said, but his tone was uncertain. In fact, it raises more questions. A sudden, unexplained power surge during a dungeon breach? It reeks of manipulation. Elias felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He'd hoped this would vindicate them, but instead, it had only deepened the suspicion. The elite teachers were murmuring, their earlier mockery replaced by wary confusion. I want a full investigation, Valerius declared. Professor Arcturus, you will lead it. Examine the boy, his skill, and Thorn's methods. If there is any sign of cheating or system tampering, the consequences will be severe. Arcturus nodded, a smug gleam in his eyes. Of course, Headmaster. Elias wanted to argue, to explain about the glitches, the hidden potentials. But he knew they wouldn't listen. Not yet. The system had them too tightly in its grip. He looked at Leo, who met his gaze with a mix of awe and fear. It's okay, Elias said softly, though he knew it wasn't. We'll figure this out. As the headmaster turned to address the gathered students, ordering them back to their dorms, Elias's eye caught a movement on the rooftops overlooking the courtyard. A shadowy figure stood there, silhouetted against the setting sun, watching. Not a teacher, not a student. Someone with a stillness that spoke of intent. The figure lingered for a moment, then melted away into the dusk. Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. The dungeon breach, the timing, the watcher, it couldn't be coincidence. Something was moving in the academy's shadows, and his class had just stepped into the light. He put a hand on Leo's shoulder. Come on, he said. Let's get the others inside. As they walked away, the dust of the rock crawlers stirred in the breeze, a silent testament to a power that shouldn't exist. And in the back of his mind, Elias's true appraiser's eye flickered with a new alert, one he kept to himself. Observation, external monitoring detected. Source, unknown. Threat level, elevated. The game had just gotten more dangerous. The morning after the disciplinary hearing, Elias stood before his class in the secluded training yard behind the abandoned East Wing. The air was crisp with the scent of damp earth and old stone, a far cry from the polished arenas where elite students practiced. Sunlight filtered through cracks in the overgrown ivy that clung to the crumbling walls, casting dappled shadows across the faces of his 7 students. Leo still looked shaken, his hands trembling slightly as he stared at his palms. The memory of yesterday's salt burst that had annihilated the rock crawlers hung heavy in the silence. Maya, the girl with telekinesis, spoons, fidgeted with a bent teaspoon she'd pulled from her pocket, her dark eyes darting between Elias and the others. I know what you're all thinking, Elias began, his voice calm but firm. He leaned against a moss-covered pillar, his simple teacher's robes looking out of place against the decay. Yesterday changed everything. Leo's power wasn't just a fluke, it was a glimpse of what you all truly are. He activated his true appraiser's eye, the world shifting into layers of data. Over each student floated their system-designated skill names in bland white text. Create minor illusion, grow mold, predict weather, 50% accuracy. But beneath those labels, in flickering crimson glyphs that seemed to bleed through reality, he saw the truth. Finn, Elias said, turning to a lanky boy with perpetually tousled hair who sat on a broken bench. Your skill is listed as Create Minor Illusion, correct? Finn nodded, looking embarrassed. Yeah, I can make little holograms of butterflies or fake coins. The elite kids call it party tricks for idiots. Show me, Elias instructed. With a sigh, Finn raised his hands. A shimmering image of a blue butterfly appeared above his palm, fluttering with delicate grace. It was pretty but insubstantial, exactly what the system claimed it to be. Elias focused his eye. The butterfly's data stream glitched, pixels distorting at the edges. Beneath, Create Minor Illusion, the crimson text revealed, Hard Light Manifestation, Primordial Light Fragment. Now, Elias said, stepping closer. Don't think of it as an illusion. Think of it as solid light. Something you can touch. Something real. Finn frowned. But it's not real. It's just light and... The system is lying to you, Elias interrupted, his voice dropping to a whisper. What you're seeing is a glitch, a piece of something much bigger that the world doesn't want you to have. Try bending the light. Make it dense. Hesitantly, Finn concentrated. The butterfly flickered, its wings becoming more defined. A faint hum filled the air, and the sunlight around them seemed to warp, particles of dust catching invisible beams. The butterfly's wings hardened, taking on a crystalline sheen. Now catch it, Elias said. Finn reached out, and his fingers closed around something solid. He gasped, nearly dropping it. The butterfly sat in his palm, no longer a hologram but a small, weightless construct of shimmering light that cast prismatic reflections on his skin. It felt cool and smooth, like polished glass. I can hold it, Finn breathed, his eyes wide. It's real. Around them, the other students leaned in, murmuring in awe. Maya dropped her spoon with a clatter. That's impossible, whispered Clara, the girl with grow mold. Illusions can't become solid. They can if they were never illusions to begin with, Elias said, a smile touching his lips. He turned to the group. This is what I've been trying to show you. Your so-called F-tier skills are fragments of primordial authorities, powers that existed before the system categorized everything. The system hides them because they're unpredictable, because they're dangerous. For the next hour, Elias worked with each student, using his eye to guide them past their system-imposed limitations. Clara's grow mold glitched into fungal dominion, decay aspect, allowing her to accelerate decomposition in a small patch of earth until a wooden training dummy crumbled into dust. Sam, whose predict weather, 50% accuracy had always been a joke, found he could sense atmospheric pressure shifts with pinpoint precision. SkySense, atmospheric manipulation fragment. As the students practiced, something strange began to happen. The air around them crackled with static. Finn's hardlight butterfly suddenly duplicated into 3 identical copies before collapsing into pixels. Clara's decay patch spread uncontrollably for a moment, eating through a stone slab before she reeled it back in, panting. Then the system interfaces floating in their peripheral vision, invisible to Elias but ever present for them, began to flicker. My status screen is glitching, Leo said, staring at empty space. It's showing random numbers. Error codes. Maya nodded, her face pale. Mine too. It says corrupted data stream, where my skill description should be. Elias felt a chill. His own eye showed the ambient system data in the area becoming unstable, lines of code fragmenting and reforming nonsensically. It was as if their glitched abilities were causing interference, a resonance that the system couldn't fully suppress. It's reacting to you, Elias murmured, more to himself than to them. Your powers are stressing its framework. He dismissed class early, telling them to rest and not to use their abilities outside the training yard. As they filed out, buzzing with nervous excitement, Elias stayed behind, his mind racing. He needed answers. That afternoon, he went to the Academy's archives, a vast, dusty library deep in the central spire. Most teachers avoided it, preferring digital databases, but Elias had learned in his previous life that the oldest truths were often buried in physical texts. The archivist, an elderly man with milky eyes, barely glanced up as Elias entered. 0 stars don't usually bother with history, he croaked. I'm looking for anything about system errors, Elias said carefully, or abilities that don't fit the categories. The archivist's gaze sharpened. Try the restricted section. Third aisle, bottom shelf. Dustier the book, truer the tale. Elias found the aisle, the air thick with the smell of parchment and decay. He pulled a heavy tome bound in cracked leather from the lowest shelf. Its title was faded, but he could make out the words, Chronicles of the Unwritten War. He opened it, and his eye immediately detected anomalies in the text. Certain passages were blurred, as if someone had tried to erase them, but beneath the smudges, his power revealed hidden ink. He read of a conflict called the Glitch War, waged millennia ago between the ordered ones who built the system and reality's fragments, beings whose powers defied categorization. The fragments could manipulate fundamental aspects of existence: light, decay, salt, concepts. But they were hunted, their abilities sealed or purged, labeled as glitches to be corrected. One passage, nearly obliterated, sent a shiver down his spine. The overseers watch from between the lines, ensuring no fragment rises anew. Their gaze is deletion. Elias's hands tightened on the pages. This was it, the proof he needed. His students weren't defective. They were inheritors of a forbidden legacy. And someone, somewhere, was determined to keep that legacy buried. He spent hours cross-referencing other texts, piecing together fragments of history. The Glitch War had ended with the system's victory, but remnants of the fragment's power lingered, manifesting as F-tier skills in rare individuals. The Academy, he realized, might be more than just a school. It could be a containment facility, a place where glitched users were gathered and kept weak under the guise of education. As dusk fell, Elias returned to his small quarters in the teacher's dormitory. The room was sparse: a bed, a desk, a window overlooking the darkening campus. He sat at the desk, his mind whirling with implications. If the overseers were real, and they were watching, his system interface, which he usually kept minimized, flickered to life without his command. A cold dread settled in his stomach. The screen, normally a clean blue with white text, was corrupted, scrolling lines of gibberish, broken icons, and static. Then, in the center of the chaos, words formed in stark, black letters against a blood-red background. The overseers are watching. Cease your actions, or face deletion. The message hung there, pulsing faintly. Elias stared, his breath catching. This wasn't a random error. It was a direct warning. A threat. He reached out, his finger hovering over the interface. Before he could react, the message dissolved into static, and the screen returned to normal, showing his bland teacher profile. Elias Vance, 0-star appraiser, defective class instructor. But the words echoed in his mind. He looked out the window, where lights were coming on in the elite dormitories. Somewhere out there, shadowy figures were watching, and they knew what he was doing. Deletion, he whispered to the empty room. He thought of Leo's Salt Baron, Finn's Hardlight, Clara's Decay. His students, just beginning to understand their power. He thought of the figure on the rooftop after the hearing, watching silently. A slow, determined smile spread across his face. In his previous life as a strategist, he'd never backed down from a threat. He'd analyzed it, exploited its weaknesses. You want to delete us? He said softly, his eyes hardening. Then you'd better bring more than a warning. He closed his interface, the glow fading from his eyes. Outside, the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, cold and distant. The game had just changed, and Elias Vance was no longer just a teacher. He was a glitch in the system, and he was ready to fight back. The morning sun filtered through the arched windows of the Defective Class's training hall, casting long shadows across the worn stone floor. Elias stood before his students, the air thick with the scent of old parchment and the faint metallic tang of magic gone awry. His system interface had been flickering all night since the overseer's warning, but he pushed the anxiety aside, focusing on the 10 faces before him. The annual mock battle has been announced, Elias began, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his gut. We've been entered as participants. A collective groan echoed through the hall. Leo, the salt summoner, slumped in his chair, running a hand through his unruly red hair. Cannon fodder again, he muttered, His usual spark of defiance dimmed. They just want to show off how easily the elites can crush us. Maya, her dark eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, adjusted her spectacles with a delicate touch. Last year, they had us defend a flag while the A-tier classes practiced siege spells on our position. I spent 3 days picking splinters out of my robes. Elias allowed the bitterness to hang in the air for a moment before clapping his hands together. This year will be different. We're not going to be punching bags. We're going to fight back, using what makes us unique. He activated his true Appraiser's eye, the world shifting into layers of data and hidden text. Over each student, he saw the familiar glitch descriptions. Leo's summon salt shimmered with the overlay Desert Dominion, rank 1, while Maya's telekinesis spoons pulsed with the deeper truth, conceptual utensil manipulation, spatial warping incomplete. Finn, the boy who'd recently discovered his illusions were hard-light constructs, had hard-light manifestation, rank 1, glowing faintly around his fingertips. The mock battle is a team competition, Elias explained, pacing before them. 5-member squads, capture the flag rules across the Crystal Grove arena. But here's the twist. We're going to turn our weaknesses into combos that the system can't anticipate. He gestured to Maya. Your power isn't just about moving spoons. It's about manipulating the concept of utensil. Anything designed to serve a purpose. What if you could warp the space around those objects? Bend the very air where a spoon exists. Maya's eyes widened. She reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a simple silver teaspoon. Holding it aloft, she concentrated. At first, nothing happened. Then the air around the spoon began to shimmer, like heat haze over desert sands. The teaspoon itself remained still, but the space around it distorted, bending light in strange, prismatic patterns. I can feel it, she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. It's like the spoon is an anchor, and I can pull on the reality tied to it. Elias nodded, a fierce pride swelling in his chest. Good. Now, Leo, your salt doesn't just dehydrate. It creates zones of null magic. Pair with Maya. If she warps space around a salt crystal, you could create pockets where enemy spells unravel before they even form. For the next week, the defective class trained in secret, using the abandoned storage chambers beneath the Academy's eastern wing. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and salt, punctuated by the crackle of hard-light constructs taking shape. Finn learned to solidify his illusions into shimmering barriers, while another student, Kira, whose grow moss skill hid the glitch, life force absorption, practiced leeching minute amounts of energy from the stone walls. But the system was watching. During their third session, a corrupted data stream erupted from Elias's interface, scrolling error messages in jagged, crimson text, glitch detected in training parameters. Correcting. The air grew cold, and for a moment, the very light in the room seemed to stutter. Elias quickly dismissed the alert, but the damage was done. A fine layer of frost-coated Leo's salt crystals, and Maya's spoon warping produced a discordant screech that left everyone's ears ringing. They're tightening the screws, Elias muttered to himself, his mind racing. The overseer's warning wasn't idle. They were actively interfering. He needed to accelerate their training. 2 days before the mock battle, disaster struck during a gear inspection. The Academy provided basic equipment, padded armor, wooden staves, and communication crystals. As the defective class gathered their gear from the supply room, an elite student from the A-tier pyromancy class, a sneering boy named Gareth, accidentally bumped into their cart. Oops, Gareth said, his smile all teeth. Clumsy me. Elias's eye flared to life instantly. Over Gareth's retreating form, he saw the telltale shimmer of active spell work, a subtle enchantment woven into the padding of their armor. Sabotage detected. Heat sink hex. Activates upon mana usage, causing second-degree burns. Don't touch the armor. Elias barked, but Maya was already reaching for her set. Her fingers brushed the padded leather, and the hex triggered, a faint red glow spreading from the point of contact. Maya gasped, but instead of pulling away, she focused. Her teaspoon was in her other hand, and she thrust it toward the armor. Utensil, purpose, serve. She chanted, her voice strained. The air around the teaspoon warped violently, and the hex's energy, designed to channel heat, suddenly twisted. Instead of burning Maya, It flowed into the distorted space around the spoon, condensing into a tiny, harmless ball of warmth that hovered like a will-o'-the-wisp. With a final push, Maya directed the energy into a nearby water jug, which steamed gently. Gareth, who'd paused to watch his handiwork, stared open-mouthed. "How did you?" "A prank for a prank," Maya said coolly, though Elias could see the sweat beading on her forehead. She pointed her spoon at Gareth's own armor, and with a flick of her wrist, the warped space snapped back, depositing the ball of warmth directly into his collar. Gareth yelped, dancing as the sudden heat singed his neck. The other elites laughed, and Gareth fled, his face crimson with humiliation. But Elias felt no triumph, only a deepening unease. Maya's quick thinking had saved them, but it had also exposed a fraction of her true power. Word would spread. That night, Elias gathered his students for a final strategy session. The Crystal Grove Arena was a sprawling forest of luminescent trees, with floating platforms and hidden ravines. "We'll use the terrain," he said, sketching a rough map in the dust. "Leo, you create salt zones near the choke points. Drain the ambient mana to slow their advance. Maya, you warp space around key objects, their flag, their communication crystals. Finn, hard light decoys to confuse them. Kira, moss patches to sap their stamina." He looked at each of them, his gaze intense. "Remember, we're not here to win by their rules. We're here to show that our glitches are a force they can't ignore." The morning of the mock battle dawned clear and bright. The academy grounds were thronged with students in colorful robes, the air buzzing with excitement, and the sharp scent of ozone from pre-battle spellcasting. The defective class stood apart, a small island of muted grays and browns amidst the vibrant silks of the elite. Headmaster Valerius, a tall man with a beard like spun silver, addressed the crowd from a floating podium. "Today, we test your skills in simulated combat. Remember, this is an exercise in teamwork and control. The system monitors all. Let your abilities shine within the sanctioned parameters." His eyes lingered on Elias's group a moment too long, and Elias felt a chill. The overseer's warning echoed in his mind. Cease your actions or face deletion. They were herded into the arena's entrance tunnel, a stone passage that led to the Crystal Grove. Around them, elite teams joked and boasted, their confidence a palpable force. Gareth shot Maya a venomous look, his neck still red from her retaliation. "Ready?" Elias asked his students. Leo cracked his knuckles. "As I'll ever be." Maya adjusted her glasses, her teaspoon tucked securely in her belt. "Let's show them what defective really means." The gates swung open, and the teams surged forward into the grove. The trees glittered with internal light, casting shifting patterns on the mossy ground. In the distance, Elias could see the enemy flag, a shimmering banner of blue silk, mounted on a central platform. But as his feet touched the soft earth, a tremor ran through the ground. At first, he thought it was part of the arena, some illusion or terrain effect. Then the tremor deepened, becoming a violent shake that sent students stumbling. The crystalline trees rattled, their light flickering erratically. From the center of the grove, the ground cracked open with a sound like tearing metal. A jagged fissure split the earth, glowing with an ominous purple light. Then another, and another, ripping across the arena in a spiderweb of destruction. Screams erupted as dungeons erupted from the cracks, not the controlled training portals of the academy, but wild, chaotic rifts spewing monsters. A swarm of manascorpions scuttled forth, their carapaces gleaming with corrupted energy. From a larger fissure, the head of a stone golem emerged, its eyes burning with system error red. Headmaster Valerius's voice boomed from the crumbling podium, now laced with panic. "This is not part of the simulation. All students, retreat too." His words were cut off as a chunk of crystal platform sheared away, crashing into the ground. The mock battle was over. The apocalypse had begun. Elias's true appraisers eye blazed a life, scanning the chaos. Over each dungeon rift, he saw the same glitched text: System Apocalypse Event. Unauthorized reality breach. Purge protocols activated. He turned to his students, their faces pale with terror. "Forget the flag," he shouted over the roar of collapsing earth. "This is real. Stick together, and use everything I taught you." As the elite classes froze or fled in disarray, the defective class stood their ground, a small, determined not in the center of the unraveling world. Leo's hands glowed with salt crystals, Maya's spoon already warping the air around her, and Elias knew. Their training was about to be tested in fire and blood. The ground continued to crack, more dungeons vomiting forth horrors, and in the distance, a shadowy figure watched from a crumbling tower, its form flickering with system static. The world shattered into noise and motion. One moment, the Crystal Grove Arena had been a pristine battlefield of polished marble and enchanted trees, teams of elite students taking their positions with smug confidence. The next, the ground heaved like a living thing, cracked spiderwebbing across the stone with deafening roars. From the fissures, dungeons erupted, not the controlled, system-sanctioned portals used for training, but raw, jagged tears in reality that vomited forth monsters in a churning tide. Elias's hand shot up, his voice cutting through the first screams. Defective Class, form up. His students, 12 of them, clustered at the arena's edge where they'd been relegated as cannon fodder, froze. Leo, the lanky boy with perpetually salt-dusted fingers, stared as a swarm of razor-winged imps boiled from a crack 10 yards away. Maya, her hands already trembling around the spoons she always carried, backed into Sarah, the girl whose create minor illusion had once been good for nothing but prankish ghost images. Teacher, what's happening? Leo's voice was thin, swallowed by the rising din. System apocalypse event, Elias said, his true appraisers eye already active, scanning the chaos. Glowing text flickered in his vision over every monster. Mana-infused imp, level 15. Stonecrusher troll, level 22. But his focus was on his students. Their skills, those laughable F-tier entries, now shimmered with hidden lines of corrupted code. Salt Baron. Glitch evolution available. Spoon of Fate. Spatial warp detected. The mock battle's over. This is real. And we're not running. Across the arena, the elite classes were disintegrating into panic. Gareth, the golden-haired prodigy who'd sabotaged their gear earlier, stood gaping as his team's polished arcane barrage spells fizzled against a troll's hide, the monster shrugging off the magic with a guttural laugh. It's not working. Gareth shrieked, his composure gone. The system's glitching. My interface is lagging. Elias ignored him. He stepped forward, placing himself between his students and the advancing imps. Leo, Salt Baron. Now. But I've only practiced on moisture in the air, on small things. Now. Elias's voice was a whip crack, honed from his past life as a strategist. Trust your glitch. Don't summon salt. Command the concept of absence. Leo swallowed, his eyes wide with terror. He raised his hands, the familiar gesture for summon salt, but his fingers trembled. The imps dove, claws extended, their shrieks piercing. At the last second, Leo squeezed his eyes shut and pushed. It started as a whisper, a faint, crystalline shimmer in the air around him. Then it spread. Salt didn't fall from his hands. Instead, the very atmosphere seemed to desiccate, turning brittle and dry. A zone of about 20 feet radius bloomed around Leo, the grass withering to dust, the marble cracking with a sound like snapping bones. The imps hit the edge of the zone and faltered. Their wings, glowing with mana, dulled and crumbled. They dropped from the air, not dead, but drained, their magical essence siphoned away into a barren nothingness. Leo opened his eyes, staring at his hands. I didn't just summon salt. I made a desert. Elias's eye flashed. Salt Baron, rank 1 activated. Mana drain field established. Glitch integration, 12%. Good. Hold it. Maya, you're next. Look north, the dragon. From the largest dungeon rift, a creature had emerged, a scaled behemoth with wings that blotted out the false sun of the arena's enchantment. It was a hoarding WIRM, level 40, and it was not alone. Around it, spilling from the dungeon like a cursed river, was its treasure hoard, coins, gems, weapons, all glittering with malignant energy. The dragon roared, a sound that shook the ground, and breathed a cone of molten gold that melted a squad of elite students where they stood. Maya flinched, her spoons, ordinary steel utensils, clattering in her grip. I can't. That's a dragon, teacher. My telekinesis is for spoons. Your glitch isn't about spoons, Elias said, his voice low and urgent. He pointed at the hoard. It's about utility. About the concept of tools. That hoard is its treasure, its tool for power. Warp it. How? Stop thinking of moving objects. Think of bending purpose. What is a spoon? A thing for holding. A coin? A thing for value. Twist them. Maya's knuckles whitened. She focused, her eyes narrowing on the glittering pile. In her mind, she didn't see spoons. She saw the idea of containment, of manipulation. Her skill, telekinesis, spoons, had always felt like a cruel joke, until Elias showed her the glitched text. Conceptual utensil manipulation, fragment. She took a deep breath and pushed her will outward. At first, nothing happened. The dragon lunged toward a group of fleeing elites, its maw gaping. Then, the horde stirred. Coins didn't levitate. Instead, they lost their coinness. They flattened, elongated, twisted into shapes. Forks, knives, ladles, all made of solid gold and gemstone. They shot upward, not as projectiles, but as anchors, wrapping around the dragon's limbs, its wings, its neck. The beast thrashed, but the utensils held, pinning it to the ground with a deafening crash. It wasn't physical strength. It was as if the dragon's own treasure had turned against it, rejecting its purpose as wealth and becoming bindings. Maya gasped, sweat beading on her forehead. I called it Spoon of Fate, because it's not just spoons, it's fateful tools. Elias nodded, his eye updating. Spoon of Fate. Rank 1 activated. Conceptual warp sustained. Glitch integration, 15%. Hold it there. The rest of you now? Sarah, illusions aren't fake light. They're solidified photons. Make a wall. Sarah, a petite girl with nervous eyes, jerked into action. Her usual, create minor illusion, produced faint mirages, but now, with Elias's training, she understood the glitch, hard light projection, fragment. She waved her hands, and instead of a ghostly image, a shimmering barrier of solid light erupted between their group and a pack of charging trolls. The trolls slammed into it, and the light held, cracking but not breaking, buying time. One by one, the defective class joined the fight. Ben, whose grow moss skill was mocked as gardening, unleashed verdant strangle, moss that grew with vicious speed, entangling monsters and sapping their strength. Anya, with whisper to animals, found her glitch was primordial command, her voice now forcing smaller beasts to turn on their larger kin. The arena became a kaleidoscope of glitched abilities, each one flaring with corrupted code that the system tried, and failed, to suppress. Elias directed them with cold precision, his mind racing. His eye scanned the battlefield, noting the elite class's collapse. Gareth was on his knees, sobbing as a troll advanced. His perfect spells were useless against the apocalypse's raw chaos. The headmaster's voice boomed from crumbling observation towers, ordering retreat, but the dungeon rifts were multiplying, cutting off exits. For a moment, Elias allowed himself a grim satisfaction. His students, the defective ones, were fighting with a cohesion the elites had never needed to learn. They covered each other, Leo's Salt Baron protecting Maya as she maintained her hold on the dragon, Sarah's light wall shielding Ben while he ensnared more foes. They were scared, yes, Elias saw the terror in their eyes, but they were moving, acting, embracing their glitches. Then the ground shook again, harder than before. From the central dungeon rift, the one that had birthed the dragon, something else began to emerge. It was not a monster of flesh and scale. It was a construct of shimmering, corrupted data, a towering humanoid figure of shifting pixels and error messages. It stood 50 feet tall, its form flickering between solidity and static. Elias's eye strained, text scrolling rapidly. System corrupted Titan level. Designation, Enforcer class entity. Primary function, glitch purge. Status, immune to conventional attacks. Warning, reality integrity compromised. The Titan took a step, and the ground didn't just crack. It glitched, patches of terrain flickering into nonsensical geometries before snapping back. It raised a hand, and a beam of white noise lanced out, disintegrating a chunk of the arena where a group of elites had been hiding. There were no screams. They simply vanished, their existence erased from the system's log. Silence fell, broken only by the Titan's low hum, a sound like a corrupted hard drive. Even the monsters paused, cowering before this new horror. Leo's salt baron flickered. Maya's hold on the dragon slipped, the beast roaring as it struggled free. The defective class stared, their newfound confidence draining away. "Teacher," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. "What is that?" Elias's eye ached, the true appraiser's ability overloading with warnings. "Unauthorized entity detected. System override in progress. Recommend evacuation. Impossible." He looked at his students, their faces pale, their glitches sputtering in the Titan's presence. The academy lay in ruins around them, fires burning from dragon breath, rubble everywhere. The elite classes were broken, the headmaster's orders silent now. He met their eyes, one by one. "That," he said, his voice steady despite the cold dread in his gut, "is why the system called you defective. It's here to delete us, and we're going to have to break it first." The Titan turned its featureless head toward them, a single, pulsing red eye forming in its static-filled face. It ignored the dragon, the trolls, the fleeing students. Its gaze locked on Elias and his class. A command echoed, not in sound, but in their system interfaces, a message that burned behind their eyes. Glitch detected. Purging initiated. Elias raised a hand, his own interface glitching with errors. "Hold your ground. This is what we trained for." But inside, his mind raced. His eye showed no weaknesses, no conventional attacks that would work. The Titan was a walking system error, a purge tool made manifest. And it was coming for them. As the Titan took another step, the ground glitching beneath its feet, Elias knew the real battle had just begun. And in the ruins of the academy, with monsters still roaming and his students' glitches flickering like dying stars, he had no plan. Only the desperate hope that their flaws could become strengths one more time. The Titan stood like a monument to annihilation, its form shimmering with corrupted system glyphs that pulsed with sickly green light. Towering over the shattered academy courtyard, it was a construct of geometric plates and crystalline joints, each movement accompanied by the screech of grinding data. Elias's true appraiser's eye flared to life, the world dissolving into streams of information. He focused on the Titan, and text scrolled across his vision in frantic, glitching characters. Entity, System Enforcer Alpha Type. Designation, Glitch Purgation Protocol. Status, Active. Weakness, Primordial Code Fragment Synchronization. Warning, Conventional Attacks Ineffective. Mana-based skills nullified, ***. Elias's breath caught. Around him, his students huddled behind the rubble of a collapsed lecture hall. Leo, his hands still trembling from unleashing the Salt Baron, had salt crystals forming at his fingertips like frost. Maya clutched a bent spoon she'd warped into a crude dagger, her knuckles white. The other 8 students, each with their own bizarre F-tier skills now revealed as glitched fragments, washed with wide, terrified eyes. The elite classes had fled or lay unconscious, their polished magic useless against the Enforcer's anti-mana field. "It's not a monster," Elias said, his voice cutting through the distant roars of lesser beasts still pouring from dungeon rifts. "It's a program. A system executioner sent to delete us." Leo swallowed hard. "Delete? Like erase?" "Permanently," Elias confirmed, his eye tracking the Titan's movements. It took a step forward, the ground cracking under its weight. Each footfall emitted a low hum that vibrated through the air, a sound like corrupted data streams. "But it has a flaw. My eye shows it's vulnerable to synchronized glitch energy. Our combined abilities can overload its code." Maya stepped forward, her usual sarcasm gone. "How? My spoons barely scratched its armor earlier." "Because you were acting alone," Elias said, his mind racing. He remembered the ancient text from his research, hints of the glitch war, where similar beings were defeated by coordinated assaults. "We need to combine our glitches. Leo, your salt doesn't just dehydrate, it erodes structured systems. Maya, your telekinesis warps conceptual boundaries. If we layer them, we might disrupt its core." He turned to the others. "Kale, your create minor illusion. It's not illusion, it's hard light manipulation. Project a decoy to draw its attention. Lyra, your grow moss is actually life weave. Tangle its joints with accelerated flora. Everyone, on my signal, unleash everything you have at its chest plate." That's where my eye shows a concentration of system code. The Titan raised an arm, crystalline fingers extending. A beam of green energy lanced out, carving a furrow in the earth toward them. Elias shoved Leo aside, the heat searing his robes. Now, he yelled. Kale, a lanky boy with nervous eyes, clenched his fists. Light particles coalesced into a shimmering duplicate of the Titan, a perfect mimic that charged forward. The Enforcer paused, its head tilting as it processed the anomaly. In that moment, Lyra, a girl with vines woven into her hair, pressed her hands to the ground. Moss erupted in violent growth, crawling up the Titan's legs with unnatural speed, thickening into woody tendrils that creaked against its joints. Leo, Maya, go, Elias commanded. Leo took a deep breath, his fear melting into focus. He thrust his hands forward, not summoning a cloud of salt, but directing a concentrated stream of crystalline particles that hissed through the air. They struck the Titan's chest plate, not dissolving it, but seeping into the seams. Where they touched, the green glyphs flickered, their light dimming. Elias's, I showed the data. Armor integrity, 92%. 89%, ***. Maya followed, her eyes narrowing. She didn't just levitate spoons. She focused on the concept of utensil within the Titan's structure. With a grunt of effort, she twisted her hands. Deep inside the Enforcer, metallic components meant for articulation warped, bending into spoon-like shapes that jammed its internal mechanisms. The Titan staggered, a grinding noise echoing from its core. Core disruption, 15%, Elias read. More. All of you, add your glitches. The other students joined in. A boy with Whisper to Animals, now revealed as Beast Command, directed a swarm of surviving dungeon rats to chew at wiring. A girl with Dull Blade, actually wielding Edge of Entropy, that caused minor rust patches. The Titan roared, a sound like static feedback, and swiped at the hard light decoy, shattering it. But it was slowing, its movements becoming jerky. Elias felt a surge of hope. They were doing it. Their glitches, once mocked as worthless, were unraveling a system enforcer. He pushed his eye further, seeking the core's exact location. Target acquired. Central processing node, 2 meters deep in chest cavity. Aim for the center, he shouted. One more push. Leo poured more salt, his face pale with strain. The crystals now ate deeper, creating cracks in the armor. Maya screamed as she forced another internal warp, blood trickling from her nose from the mental exertion. The Titan's chest plate glowed erratically, glyphs scrambling into nonsense symbols. Then, a shadow fell over them. Not from the Titan, but from above. A figure dropped from a nearby crumbling tower, landing silently on a pile of rubble. He wore sleek, black robes edged with silver circuitry patterns, and his face was obscured by a hood, but Elias's eye immediately flared with warnings. Entity, System Administrator Rogue. Designation, Observer Zeta. Status, Unauthorized Intervention. Threat level, Extreme. The Administrator raised a hand, and the Titan froze mid-motion, its struggles ceasing. The green energy around it stabilized, though the damage remained. The students gasped, their attacks faltering. Impressive, the Administrator said, his voice smooth and synthetic, like a system alert given voice. You've pushed the Enforcer to 40% core disruption, far beyond what the Academy's records predicted for F-tier defects. Elias stepped in front of his students, his heart pounding. Who are you? A concerned party, the Administrator replied, lowering his hood. He had sharp, ageless features and eyes that glowed with faint data streams. You may call me Zeta. I've been watching you, Elias. Ever since your true appraisers, I first activated. The system flagged it as an anomaly, but I diverted the correction protocols. Leo whispered. He's the one from the rooftops. After the hearing, Zeta smiled thinly. Perceptive. Yes, I observed your little display with the monster swarm. And now this. He gestured to the frozen Titan. You've confirmed my hypothesis. This academy isn't just a school. It's a testing ground, designed by the overseers, the true rulers of the system, to identify and suppress glitched users like your students. Maya lowered her spoon dagger, her expression wary. Suppress? What? Because glitches are fragments of primordial authority, Zeta explained, pacing slowly. They're unpatched pieces of reality's code, left over from when the system was built to control existence. The overseers fear them. Why? Because glitches represent free will, the ability to defy the system's rigid order. Your students' worthless skills? They're not weak. They're raw, unchecked power that could rewrite the world if mastered. Elias's mind raced, connecting the dots. The ancient texts, the system errors, the mysterious warnings, it all fit. And the apocalypse? The dungeon rifts. A stress test, Zeta said, triggered remotely to force glitched users to reveal themselves. The overseers monitor from the shadows, purging any who become too noticeable. This Titan was their cleanup crew. But you've trained these defects into something dangerous, something that could threaten the overseer's control. He stopped, facing Elias directly. Which brings me to my offer. Join me. I'm a rogue administrator. I broke from the overseers when I realized their tyranny. Together, we can use your class's glitches to hack the system, to create a new order where power isn't dictated by stars and tiers. I have resources, knowledge of system backdoors. You and your students could be legends, not outcasts. Elias glanced back at his class. They looked to him, their faces a mix of fear and hope. Leo's salt crystals had stopped forming. Maya's hands were shaking, but their eyes held a spark, the same spark he'd nurtured through secret trainings. He thought of the bullying, the disciplinary hearings, the way the world had dismissed them. Zeta's offer was tempting. Power, recognition, an end to the struggle. But his true appraiser's eye flickered, showing him hidden text beneath Zeta's smooth demeanor. Motive, ambiguous. Truth probability, 67% ***. And he remembered the warning from the mysterious message. The overseers are watching. What if Zeta was part of that, a trick to lure them in? And if we refuse? Elias asked, his voice steady. Zeta's smile vanished. Then I reactivate the enforcer. It will purge your students' glitches, and likely their minds in the process. The overseers will label them as corrupted data and delete them permanently. You'll be erased too, Elias. Your eye is too valuable to leave rogue. He gestured, and the Titan's glyphs brightened, a low hum returning. Choose now. Join me, and we'll dismantle this testing ground together. Refuse, and watch everything you've built turn to dust. The courtyard fell silent, save for the distant cries of monsters and the crackle of dying magic. Elias looked at his students, at Leo, who'd gone from summoning table salt to eroding system armor, at Maya, who'd turned spoons into weapons of conceptual warping, at all of them, who'd trusted him when no one else would. They weren't just tools for some administrator's rebellion. They were his responsibility. He took a deep breath, the weight of the decision settling on him. The system enforcer loomed, its chest plate still cracked from their efforts. Zeta waited, his data stream, eyes unblinking. Elias's voice was quiet but firm. I didn't train them to be pawns in someone else's game. I trained them to be free. Zeta's expression hardened. A noble sentiment. A fatal one. He raised his hand, fingers poised to snap. But before he could, Elias's eye glitched violently, showing a new option, one he hadn't seen before, buried deep in his interface. Emergency override. Glitch synchronization protocol. Activate. ****. It pulsed with chaotic energy, a remnant of the ancient war. He didn't hesitate. Everyone link up. Elias yelled, tapping the option mentally. Now, the students, sensing his urgency, reached out, hands touching shoulders, a chain of connection forming. Their glitches resonated, a discordant harmony of salt, spoons, light, life, and entropy. The air shimmered with unstable energy. Zeta snapped his fingers. The Titan lurched back to life, its arm rising to fire. But Elias was already moving, his eye guiding the combined glitch stream toward the Enforcer's core. The chapter ended with the Titan's beam charging, Zeta's cold gaze fixed on them, and Elias whispering, "Forge your own fate." The air crackled with the aftermath of Zeta's ultimatum. Elias stood before the rogue system administrator, his students huddled behind him amidst the ruins of the Academy's central arena. The colossal Titan, a system enforcer of gleaming obsidian and pulsating blue data streams, loomed in the distance, its single red eye scanning the battlefield with mechanical precision. Around them, the mock battle had devolved into pure chaos. Monsters from erupted dungeons still clashed with panicked elite students, their polished spells fizzling against the horde's unnatural resilience. Zeta floated a few feet off the ground, his form shimmering with the same blue energy that powered the Titan. He wore the standard administrator's uniform, a stark white suit with glowing circuitry patterns, but his eyes held a manic gleam that betrayed his rogue status. "Last chance, Elias," he said, his voice echoing with synthetic harmonics. "Join me. Together, we can hack the system's core protocols. Your students' glitches are the key to unlocking realities beyond this controlled prison." Elias didn't hesitate. His true appraisers I had been active since Zeta's appearance, feeding him streams of data. Administrator Zeta, rogue entity. System access level 9. Primary objective, suppress glitch anomalies. Secondary objective, recruit high-value glitch bearers for personal agenda. The hidden text flickered, revealing more. Warning, administrator corruption detected. Motive, power consolidation through unauthorized system manipulation. "No deal," Elias said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. He could feel his students' fear like a physical weight. Leo trembling as salt crystals formed unconsciously around his fingertips. Maya clutching a bent spoon so tightly her knuckles were white. "You're not offering freedom. You're just trading one master for another." Zeta's smile vanished. "Then you leave me no choice." He raised a hand, and the air hummed with system commands. Lines of blue code materialized around him, scrolling too fast for normal eyes to follow. Command sequence. Disable anomalous skill manifestations. Target. All glitch-bearing entities in radius 500 meters. The effect was immediate. Leo gasped as the salt crystals around him dissolved into nothingness. Maya's spoon clattered to the ground, her telekinetic grip severed. Across the battlefield, Elias's other students cried out. A boy who had been weaving hard-light illusions saw his construct shatter. A girl whose glitch allowed her to manipulate sound waves found herself suddenly mute. They collapsed to their knees, their connections to their nascent powers violently cut. "What did you do?" Elias snarled, stepping forward. His own system interface flickered at the edge of his vision, but his true appraisers I remained active, now flashing red warnings. System override detected. Skill suppression field active. Duration, unknown. Standard protocol, Zeta said dismissively. The system has fail-safes for rogue glitches. I'm merely expediting the process. He gestured toward the Titan. Now, watch as your precious students are erased. Command, Enforcer Unit Alpha, execute purge protocol on designated anomalies. The Titan's red eye focused on the defenseless students. It raised a massive arm, energy coalescing into a sphere of destructive force. Leo looked up, his face pale with terror. "Teacher, I can't. The salt won't come." Elias's mind raced. His eye was glitching violently now, the usual clean data streams breaking into fragmented images. He saw flashes of ancient code, remnants of the glitch war Zeta had hinted at. And then, something new appeared, buried deep in his interface. A line of text that pulsed with golden light amidst the red warnings. Override authority, available. Activation requirements. Direct system conflict plus willpower threshold exceeded. Effect. Temporarily bypass local skill suppression. Duration. 30 seconds. Warning. Unauthorized use may trigger system correction protocols. 30 seconds. It was nothing against a Titan and a rogue administrator. But it was all they had. Activate. Elias roared, not with his voice, but with his will. The golden text flared, and a wave of energy erupted from him. Not magical, but something deeper, a ripple in the very fabric of the system's control. The blue suppression field around his students shattered like glass. Leo gasped as salt erupted from his hands in a geyser, crystallizing into jagged spikes. Maya's spoon shot back into her grip, and she felt her power return, stronger now, humming with a new understanding. She could feel not just spoons, but the concept of utensils, the idea of tools shaped by intent. Around them, the other students staggered to their feet, their glitches reactivated, burning brighter than before. "Impossible," Zeta hissed, his composed facade cracking. "That override shouldn't be accessible to a mere teacher." "I'm not just a teacher," Elias said, his eyes blazing with the golden light of his activated authority. "I'm their teacher. Now class. Rally formation. Leo, salt barrier on my mark. Maya, spatial disruption on the Titan's core. Everyone else, cover fire with whatever you've got." They moved with a coordination born of desperate training. Leo slammed his hands into the ground, and a wall of salt crystals erupted in a semicircle around them, shimmering with a faint aura that drained ambient mana. Maya focused, her eyes narrowing as she reached out with her mind, not at the Titan's physical form, but at the spatial coordinates around its energy core. She twisted, and the air around the Titan's chest warped, spoons and forks and knives of conceptual force materializing to pierce its armor. The Titan staggered, the energy sphere in its hand dissipating. But it wasn't defeated. Data streams flared across its body, and the damage began to repair itself. Armor plates reforming, disrupted energy channels rerouting. Its red eye locked onto Elias. New priority target identified, anomaly source. Eliminate to re-establish system stability. It's targeting you, teacher, Maya shouted, her voice strained from the effort of maintaining her disruption. Elias knew. His true appraisers, I showed him the Titan's shifted focus. System Enforcer Alpha, redirected aggression. Target, Elias, glitch catalyst. Threat level, critical. He could feel the system's correction protocols grinding into motion around him, errors popping up in his interface, his own stability wavering. The override authority was fading. The 30 seconds were almost up. Zeta recovered from his shock, his hands weaving new commands. You've only delayed the inevitable. The system will purge you all. The Titan charged, ignoring the student's attacks. It moved with terrifying speed for something so massive, closing the distance in heartbeats. Leo threw up another salt barrier, but the Titan smashed through it, crystals shattering like sugar glass. Maya tried to warp its path, but its system-hardened reality resisted her glitch. Elias stood his ground. He could run, try to dodge, but that would leave his students exposed. The Titan's fist, wreathed in crackling energy, aimed directly at him. In that frozen moment, he saw everything. Leo's desperate scream, Maya's outstretched hand, the other students' horrified faces. His mind calculated probabilities with cold, strategic clarity. If he took the hit, his system stability would likely fail, but it might buy them a few more seconds. If he dodged, the Titan's momentum would carry it into his students, and they'd be wiped out. There was no choice. He raised his arms, not to cast a spell. He had no combat skills, but to channel the last of his override authority into a shield. Golden light flared around him, forming a dome of glitching energy. Stay back, he yelled to his students. The Titan's fist connected. The impact was sound and light and pain. Elias felt his bones vibrate, his system interface screaming with alerts. Warning, system stability compromised. Warning, core functions degrading. Warning, unauthorized overload detected. The golden shield held for a fraction of a second, absorbing the brunt of the force, before shattering into a million fragments of light. The residual energy slammed into Elias. He was thrown backward, skidding across the broken ground. Agony lanced through him, not just physical, but deeper, as if his very connection to the world was unraveling. His vision blurred, the battlefield swimming into abstraction. He could hear distant screams, see flashes of salt and spoons as his students tried to counterattack, but it all felt removed, like watching a play from the back row. He struggled to his knees. His system interface was a mess of red text and corrupted data. Critical system failure imminent. Shut down in 10, 9. The countdown ticked in the corner of his vision. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't obey. The Titan loomed over him, its red eye glowing with finality. Zeta floated closer, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. A noble sacrifice, Elias. But pointless. The system cannot be defied. Elias looked past him, to his students. Leo was crying, tears cutting tracks through the salt dust on his face as he hurled crystal after crystal at the Titan, each one doing negligible damage. Maya was on her knees, her power spent, clutching her spoon like a lifeline. The others were similarly broken, their brief resurgence crushed under the weight of the system's enforcement. I'm sorry, Elias whispered, the words barely audible. He had promised to protect them, to turn their weaknesses into strengths. And now he was failing. His interface flashed a final, catastrophic alert. System collapse detected. Initiating emergency shutdown. All functions terminating. The world went dark at the edges, narrowing to a tunnel. The last thing he saw was the Titan raising its fist for the finishing blow, Zeta's smug expression, and his students' horrified faces screaming his name. Then, nothing but the cold embrace of system failure and the silent scream of his own dissolving consciousness. Darkness, not the comforting dark of night, but an absolute, consuming nothingness that swallowed sound, light, and sensation. Elias floated, or perhaps fell, in a space without up or down, his body a phantom memory. The last thing he recalled was the searing white light of the system enforcer's purge beam, the crackle of his own interface shattering, and the distant, distorted screams of Leo and Maya. Then, nothing. Time was meaningless here. He might have been drifting for seconds or centuries when a flicker of awareness returned. Not sight, but a kind of internal perception. He tried to move, but there was no body to command. Panic, cold and sharp, tried to rise, but it dissipated into the void like smoke. He was a ghost in the machine, a corrupted file in the system's trash bin. Then, a pinprick of light. Not visual light, but data, a shimmering stream of golden code that twisted and fractured in impossible geometries. It coalesced before him, forming a vague, humanoid shape made of glitching pixels and cascading error messages. The shape pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic hum that vibrated through Elias's non-existent core. Elias, a voice said, not through sound but directly into his consciousness. It was ancient, layered with echoes of countless voices, yet strangely gentle. Teacher of the broken, appraiser of the hidden, you have reached the null space. Elias focused his will, forming thoughts into words. Where am I? What is this? The space between deletions, the glitch being replied. Its form shifted, showing brief flashes of imagery, a war-torn landscape where reality itself seemed to tear at the seams, beings of pure light clashing with entities of chaotic code. I am a remnant, a memory of the glitch war, preserved in the system's blind spots. You triggered my activation when you sacrificed your stability to protect your students. Your true appraisers I has maintained a tenuous connection, though your primary interface is compromised. As if on cue, Elias felt a faint pulse from within. His eye, the cheat ability he'd been reborn with, was still active, a lone beacon in the void. He willed it to focus on the glitch being. Text flickered in his perception, corrupted but legible. Entity, ancient glitch fragment. Status, sentient data cluster. Description, a coalesced memory of free will's rebellion against systemic control. Contains archived truths of the glitch war. Threat level, not applicable, non-hostile. The glitch war, Elias thought, recalling the hints he'd found in the Academy's archives. You were there. The being's form rippled, as if sighing. I was part of it. Long ago, when the system was first imposed upon this reality, there were those who resisted. We were called glitches, errors, anomalies, defects. But we were more. We were fragments of the primordial chaos that existed before order, pieces of free will that the system could not fully subjugate. Our abilities were not weak. They were unpatched, raw, and boundless. The overseers, the architects of the system, saw us as a threat to their control. They purged us, rewriting reality to label our powers as F-tier uselessness. The war was brutal. Most of us were deleted or imprisoned in data prisons. I am one of the last echoes. Elias felt a cold understanding settle over him. This explained everything. Why his students' skills were so bizarrely specific, why the system tried to hide their true potential, why Zeta the administrator was so desperate to suppress them. They weren't defective. They were inheritors of a forbidden legacy. My students, Elias pressed, urgency coloring his thoughts. Are they safe? What's happening out there? The glitch being shimmered, and a window of distorted imagery appeared in the void. It showed the Academy ruins, smoke rising from collapsed buildings. Leo was on his knees, sweat pouring down his face as he tried to summon salt, but only a few grains trickled from his fingers. Zeta's system commands had relocked their abilities. Maya was struggling to lift a spoon from the rubble, her telekinesis flickering weakly. The other students huddled together, faces pale with fear. Zeta stood before them, his administrator robes pristine amidst the chaos, a cruel smile on his lips. The system enforcer titan loomed behind him, its crystalline body repaired and glowing with renewed menace. Your override bought them moments, but the administrator has reasserted control, the glitch being said. He is preparing to execute them. Purge the glitches, as per his programming. You are their only hope, Elias. But your current state is unsustainable. Your physical form is critically damaged, and your system integration is failing. Without intervention, you will dissipate into nothingness within minutes. Despair threatened to engulf Elias. He had come so far, uncovered so much, only to fail at the brink. He could feel it, a faint fraying at the edges of his consciousness, like a thread unraveling. But then he thought of Leo's determined grin when he first created a salt crystal that drained moisture, of Maya's proud laugh when she bent a steel spoon with her mind, of all his students who had trusted him when the world called them worthless. He couldn't abandon them. What intervention? Elias asked, his mental voice firm. The glitch being's form brightened. I offer you a choice, Elias. A path few have taken since the war. You can reboot, not as a system-bound entity, but as a glitch yourself. Merge with me, with this remnant of free will. I will repair your form using chaotic data, integrating my essence with yours. You will lose your old system privileges, but you will gain new abilities born of glitch energy. You will become something the overseers fear, a true glitch weaver, able to see and manipulate the fractures in reality. Or, you can choose dissolution. Fade away peacefully, and your students will die, but you will not suffer. Elias didn't hesitate. There was no choice, not really. I'll take the reboot. Tell me what to do. The being seemed to smile, though it had no face. Brave. Foolish, perhaps, but brave. The process will be intense. You must open yourself fully, let go of all system-imposed structures. Embrace the chaos. Golden code lines extended from the glitch being, wrapping around Elias's spectral form. Where they touched, pain erupted, not physical pain, but the agony of data being rewritten, of identity being unmade and remade. Elias screamed silently as his memories flashed before him. His past life as a strategist, his rebirth in the academy, the first time he saw Leo's hidden ocean dominion text, the warmth of his students' growing confidence. The system warnings that had haunted him, unauthorized appraisal detected, correction imminent, shattered like glass. The glitch being's voice echoed through the torment. The system was built to control, to categorize, to limit. It defines worth by stars and tears, but true power lies in the unpatched, the unpredictable. Here I saw this. Now become it. Elias felt his consciousness expand, flooding with alien knowledge, the syntax of reality's code, the rhythm of glitch patterns, the history of a war fought in data streams. His true appraiser's eye burned with new text, overriding itself. Ability. True appraiser's eye evolved to glitch apprehension vision. New functions. Detect systemic vulnerabilities, visualize data streams in real time, interface directly with chaotic energy. Warning. Integration with glitch entity may cause unpredictable side effects. He was no longer just a teacher with a cheat skill. He was becoming something else, a hybrid of man and memory, of order and anomaly. The void around him began to swirl with colors that shouldn't exist, shapes that defied geometry. The glitch being's form dissolved into a storm of light, flowing into him. Elias's perception shattered and reformed, over and over, until he felt a new solidity, a body woven from glitching pixels and human essence, humming with power. You are reborn, Elias. The voice whispered, now part of him. Go. Your students need you. In the real world, Zeta raised a hand, system commands scrolling in the air before him. Glitch users Leo, Maya, and others. By authority of the Overseers and System Protocol 7, you are hereby sentenced to deletion for unauthorized ability manifestation. May your data be recycled for order. Leo gritted his teeth, trying to push past the system lock on his skill. Come on, just a little salt. But nothing came. Maya clutched a bent spoon in her hand, tears of frustration in her eyes. The other students held on to each other, some sobbing quietly. Any last words? Zeta asked, his tone mocking. Or will you die as silently as you lived, useless and forgotten? Before anyone could respond, the air behind Zeta crackled. Not with magic, but with something stranger, a distortion like a corrupted hologram, buzzing with static. Space itself seemed to tear open, revealing a vortex of swirling, chaotic energy in hues of violet and gold. From within, a figure stepped out. It was Elias, but changed. His teacher's robes were gone, replaced by a simple, dark outfit that seemed to flicker at the edges, as if not fully rendered. His skin glowed faintly with a network of luminous, pulsing lines, like circuit diagrams etched in light. But most striking were his eyes. They shone with a chaotic, multicolored energy, swirling with fragments of code and ancient symbols. The air around him hummed with a low-frequency vibration that made the rubble tremble. Zeta spun around, his smug expression vanishing into shock. Impossible. Your system signature was terminated. You should be deleted. Elias landed softly on the broken ground, his new body feeling both familiar and alien. Lighter, stronger, thrumming with potential. He looked at his students, their faces a mix of awe and hope. Leo's jaw dropped. Maya gasped, her spoon clattering from her hand. "Teacher," Leo whispered. Elias smiled, a calm, confident smile that didn't quite reach his glowing eyes. "I'm back, and we have an administrator to deal with." He turned to Zeta, his glitch apprehension vision activating automatically. Text overlaid his view. Target: Zeta, System Administrator, Local Node. Status: Corrupted by Overseer Programming. System Defenses: High, but vulnerable to glitch intrusion. Recommended action: Override command protocols via chaotic data stream. Zeta recovered from his surprise, sneering. Rebooted as a glitch? Pathetic. You're just another error to correct. He gestured, and the System Enforcer Titan lunged forward, its massive fist glowing with purging energy aimed directly at Elias. Elias didn't flinch. He raised a hand, not in a spellcasting gesture, but as if gripping something invisible. The air around the Titan's fist fractured, glitching like a broken screen. The purge beam stuttered, dissolving into harmless pixels before it could reach him. "Your system commands don't work on me anymore, Zeta," Elias said, his voice echoing with a faint, digital reverb. "I'm not bound by your rules." He took a step forward, his eyes locking onto the administrator. "Now let's talk about free will." Zeta's confidence wavered, his hand trembling as he input frantic commands into his interface. The Titan roared, charging again, but Elias was already moving, not with speed, but with a glitch teleport that left afterimages in his wake. He reappeared beside Leo and Maya, the chaotic energy from his body washing over them. They gasped as they felt their system lock shatter, their glitched abilities flooding back, stronger and more responsive than before. "Students," Elias said, his gaze never leaving Zeta. "It's time to finish this. Follow my lead." Leo grinned, salt crystals forming around his hands in a shimmering cascade. Maya flexed her fingers, and spoons from the rubble rose into the air, twisting into sharp, deadly shapes. The other students rallied, their own glitches flickering to life with renewed vigor. Zeta backed away, his face pale. This is insubordination. The overseers will hear of this." Elias's eyes glowed brighter, chaotic energy crackling around him like a storm. "Let them come." The chapter ends with Elias standing between his empowered students and the terrified administrator, the ruins of the academy bathed in the eerie light of his glitch-reborn form, ready to turn the tide of battle with powers that defied the very system that sought to control them. The world snapped back into focus with a violent shudder. Elias stood amidst the ruins of the academy training grounds, his body thrumming with chaotic energy that made the very air crackle. His vision was no longer the crisp, analytical overlay of the true Appraiser's eye. It was a kaleidoscope of glitching data streams, reality rendered as lines of unstable code. The interface in his mind now displayed: glitch mastery, active. Authority level, primordial fragment. Before him, Administrator Zeta stood frozen, his hand outstretched toward Leo and Maya. The system locks he'd imposed on the students' abilities were shattering like glass, dissolving into fragments of corrupted light. Zeta's face, previously smug with victory, was now a mask of disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the groaning of the Titan behind him. "You were deleted." The system confirmed it. Elias took a step forward, the ground beneath his feet warping slightly, a subtle distortion of space that left faint, glitching afterimages. He could feel the new power coursing through him, a wild, untamed force that resonated with the glitches in his students. His eyes, glowing with shifting hues of violet and gold, met Zeta's. The system was wrong, Elias said, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made the air tremble. Just like it's wrong about them. He glanced at his students. Leo was on his knees, panting, salt crystals forming and dissolving around his trembling hands. Maya stood protectively in front of him, a dozen spoons hovering in the air, their surfaces shimmering with conceptual energy. Both were staring at Elias with wide eyes, a mix of relief, confusion, and awe. The other members of the defective class were scattered nearby, some injured, all exhausted, but their glitches were flickering back to life, responding to Elias's presence like iron filings to a magnet. Elias. Maya's voice was shaky. You're different. I am, Elias replied, not taking his eyes off Zeta. And so are you. All of you. Your glitches aren't flaws, they're keys. And right now, we're going to use them to break this thing. He gestured toward the Titan. The colossal system enforcer had paused in its advance, its single red eye scanning Elias with a series of rapid, glitching pulses. It was a monstrosity of polished metal and crystalline energy, standing 30 feet tall, its form shifting between solid matter and data constructs. Where Leo's salt had eroded its armor, patches of corrupted code now sizzled. But the Titan was already regenerating, new layers of defensive protocols knitting themselves together. Zeta recovered some of his composure, straightening his tailored administrator's robe. You've merely delayed the inevitable, Elias. The Enforcer is a direct extension of the system's will. It cannot be defeated by glitches, it exists to purge them. He raised a hand, and his own system interface flared to life around him, displaying complex command strings. I'll just have to manually initiate the deletion protocol. Elias didn't wait. His glitch mastery activated instinctively. He didn't just see the Titan's weaknesses. He felt them, as if the glitches in his own being were whispering to the glitches in the Titan's code. He saw the points where its reality-binding protocols were strained, where Leo's salt had introduced corrosive errors, where Maya's spoons had warped its spatial recognition algorithms. Leo, Maya, listen to me, Elias said, his voice cutting through the chaos. He didn't shout. The words carried on a wave of glitch resonance, reaching his students with perfect clarity. Your abilities are two sides of the same coin. Leo's salt doesn't just dehydrate. It introduces entropy, decay at a fundamental level. Maya's spoons don't just move objects. They manipulate the concept of utensil, bending the rules of utility and purpose. Combine them. Synchronize. Leo looked up, sweat dripping from his brow. How? I can barely keep the salt from dissolving on its own. Don't control it, Elias instructed, his eyes never leaving the Titan as it took a ground-shaking step forward. Guide it. Let the glitch flow. Remember what I taught you. Your power wants to be used. It's been suppressed for so long it's screaming to break free. Maha nodded, her expression hardening with determination. She closed her eyes, and the hovering spoons began to spin, tracing intricate patterns in the air. I can feel it, she murmured. The spaces between things, they're not empty. They're full of rules. And I can tweak them. Elias focused his glitch mastery on her. He saw her skill, telekinesis, spoons, not as a static entry, but as a living, glitching entity. With a thought, he nudged it, feeding it a fragment of his own chaotic energy. The skill shimmered, and its description updated in his vision. Conceptual utensil manipulation, rank 2. Maya gasped as the spoons around her multiplied, becoming dozens, then hundreds, each one glowing with a soft, silvery light. They weren't just physical objects anymore. They were ideas given form, symbols of manipulation and control. Now, Leo, Elias commanded. Leo pushed himself to his feet, his hands coming together. Instead of summoning loose salt, he focused, drawing on the memory of the desert he'd created earlier. The air around him grew dry and brittle, and crystalline structures of salt began to form in midair, not as random grains, but as intricate, fractal patterns. Elias saw his skill evolve in real time. Desert Dominion, rank 1, Salt of Decay, rank 2. The Titan loomed over them, its arm reforming into a massive blade of solidified data. It swung downward, aiming to cleave Elias in two. But Elias didn't flinch. He raised a hand, and the glitches in the air around him coalesced into a shimmering barrier. The blade struck, and instead of cutting, it fragmented, dissolving into a shower of corrupted pixels that hissed and evaporated. "Now," Elias shouted. Leo unleashed his power. A wave of crystalline salt surged forward, not as a brute force attack, but as a creeping, insidious decay. It washed over the Titan's legs, and where it touched, the metal and code didn't just rust. They unraveled, aging centuries in seconds, becoming dust and null data. At the same moment, Maya directed her spoons. They didn't attack the Titan directly. Instead, they flew toward the patches of decay, embedding themselves in the crumbling structure. And then she twisted the concept. The spoons became anchors, points where the rules of reality were rewritten. The Titan's leg, already weakened by Leo's decay, suddenly found itself subject to a new law. This limb is a utensil. The effect was instantaneous and grotesque. The Titan's leg warped, bending at impossible angles, flattening and elongating until it resembled a giant, twisted fork. The Enforcer staggered, off balance, its systems glitching violently as it tried to reconcile its original programming with this new, absurd reality. Zeta stared, his command interface flickering. "No, that's not. The system doesn't allow conceptual overwrites of that magnitude." "The system is full of holes," Elias said, his voice cold. He turned his attention to the administrator. "And you're about to fall through one." With a thought, Elias pushed his glitch mastery further. He reached out with his mind, not toward Zeta, but toward the system itself. The Academy's local network was a tangled web of data streams, student skill registries, environmental controls, security protocols. To his new senses, it was all visible, all malleable. He saw the elite students and teachers scattered around the ruins, their polished, system-approved skills glowing with compliant, orderly energy. He focused on a single command: temporary disable, all registered skills, non-glitch variant. It wasn't a brute force hack. It was a subtle insertion, a glitch introduced into the permission protocols. He used his authority as a primordial fragment to pose as a system update, a patch that, for the next 60 seconds, would classify all non-glitched abilities as under review. The effect was immediate and chaotic. All across the training grounds, elite students cried out as their skills winked out. A fire mage's flames died mid-cast. A telekinetic's levitated rubble crashed to the ground. Even the Academy's automated defense turrets powered down with a whine. Zeta's interface blared with alerts. Unauthorized system override detected. Source: unknown glitch entity. He frantically input countercommands, but Elias's hack was already propagating, a viral glitch that bypassed standard security. "You can't do this," Zeta screamed, his composure chip shattered. "The Overseers will." He didn't get to finish. The Titan, destabilized by Leo and Maya's combined attack, let out a deafening roar of corrupted static. Its form was breaking apart, patches of its body dissolving into digital snow, other parts warping into useless, utensil-like shapes. The single red eye flickered wildly, then went dark. With a final, shuddering convulsion, the Titan crumbled. It didn't fall with a crash of metal. It disintegrated, breaking apart into streams of null data that evaporated into the air, leaving behind only a faint, ozone-like smell and a scattering of glitching light particles. Silence fell, broken only by the distant sounds of panic from the rest of the Academy. Elias's students stared at the empty space where the Titan had been, their expressions stunned. Leo collapsed to his knees again, this time from exhaustion, but a grin spread across his face. Maya let her spoons drop, clattering to the ground, and she breathed a shaky sigh of relief. Elias turned back to Zeta. The administrator was backing away, his interface still trying to counteract the skill disable. "This isn't over," Zeta spat, though fear was clear in his eyes. "You've just signed your death warrant. The Overseers monitor everything. They'll know about this. They'll send more than an enforcer next time. They'll send a purge fleet." "Let them come," Elias said, his glowing eyes narrowing. "We'll be waiting." Zeta didn't reply. Instead, he activated a personal teleportation glyph at his feet, a high-level administrator privilege that even Elias's hack hadn't disabled. The glyph flared, and Zeta's form began to dissolve into light. But just before he vanished completely, he locked eyes with Elias. "You think you've won? You've only exposed yourselves. The overseers rule this reality. And now, they know your names. He disappeared, leaving behind only a faint shimmer in the air and the echo of his threat. Elias let out a slow breath, the chaotic energy around him subsiding slightly. The skill disable he'd imposed would wear off in less than a minute, and already he could feel the system straining to reassert control, to patch the glitches he'd introduced. But for now, they had a moment of respite. He walked over to his students. Leo was being helped up by Maya, and the others were gathering around, their injuries forgotten in the wake of their victory. They looked at Elias with a new kind of reverence, not just as a teacher, but as something more. "Is it really you?" A boy with create minor illusion asked, his voice small. "It's me," Elias assured him, though even he wasn't entirely sure what that meant anymore. The merger with the glitch remnant had changed him, woven fragments of ancient rebellion into his very being. But his purpose remained clear. And we're not done. That Titan was just a tool. The real enemy is still out there. He looked up at the sky, where the system's artificial sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the ruined academy. In the distance, he could see the elite students and teachers starting to recover, their skills flickering back to life. There would be questions, accusations, chaos. But for the first time, Elias felt no fear. He had his class. He had their glitches, now awakened and evolving. And he had a new understanding of the war they were fighting. "Gather everyone," he said to Maya and Leo. "We need to regroup. The overseers know about us now. And if Zeta's right, they won't wait long to respond." As his students moved to obey, Elias's glitch mastery interface flickered, displaying a new, ominous line of text. "Alert. Overseer communication channel detected. Transmission in progress. Threat assessment report." He smiled, a grim, determined expression. Let them report. Let them come. The game had just changed. And for the first time, the glitches were playing to win. The dust settled over the shattered academy grounds like a funeral shroud. Elias stood at the center of the devastation, his newly awakened glitch mastery humming beneath his skin like a second heartbeat. Around him, his students, Leo, Maya, and the rest of the defective class, breathed heavily, their bodies trembling not from exhaustion, but from the residual energy of their unleashed glitches. Leo's hands were still coated in crystalline salt that glittered with an unnatural light, each grain humming with the memory of the desert dominion he had summoned. Maya stood beside him, her fingers twitching as if still feeling the conceptual weight of the utensils she had warped to pin the dragon. The other students, Kale with his hard light illusions, Sarah with her gravity-negating whispers, Jean with his probability-altering dice, clustered together, their eyes wide with a mixture of triumph and terror. "Is it over?" Leo's voice cracked, his usual bravado stripped away by the enormity of what they had done. He gestured toward the crumbling remains of the system enforcer Titan, now little more than a heap of corrupted data fragments dissolving into the air. Elias's true Appraiser's eye, now upgraded to glitch mastery, rank 2, scanned the area. Golden text flickered in his vision, overlaying reality with streams of information. System stability, 43%. Localized corruption detected. Overseer surveillance, active. He clenched his jaw. No, it's just beginning. Before he could elaborate, a wave of sound washed over them. Cheers, sobs, and the frantic scrambling of survivors. The elite students and teachers, their skills temporarily disabled by Elias's hack, emerged from hiding places. Their polished uniforms were torn, their faces smudged with dirt and fear. But as they saw the defective class standing unharmed amidst the ruins, their expressions shifted from panic to something more complex: awe, jealousy, and a dawning recognition. "They saved us," whispered a girl from the Starfire class, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "The Zeros, they actually fought." Headmaster Alistair Thornwood pushed through the crowd, his ceremonial robes torn at the hem. The old man's face was pale, but his eyes burned with an intensity Elias hadn't seen before. He stopped before Elias, his gaze sweeping over the defective class. "Elias, your students, what have you done?" There was no accusation in his tone, only a weary curiosity. Elias met his eyes. "What you refused to see, Headmaster. They were never defective." A murmur rippled through the gathered survivors. Thornwood raised a hand for silence. then gestured toward the administration building, which had somehow remained mostly intact. Come, we need to talk. All of you. The headmaster's office was a study in contrasts. One wall was lined with ancient leather-bound tomes, real books, not system-encoded data crystals. The other wall glowed with holographic displays showing academy statistics, now flickering with error messages. Thornwood sank into his high-backed chair, gesturing for Elias and the students to take the mismatched seats arrayed before his desk. Leo fidgeted, salt crystals forming unconsciously on his fingertips until Maya elbowed him. Sorry, he muttered, brushing them away. Thornwood steepled his fingers. First, let me be clear. You have saved countless lives today. The Academy, what's left of it, owes you a debt. He paused, his eyes lingering on Elias. But you have also exposed something far more dangerous than any dungeon breach. Administrator Zeta's escape, his words about the overseers. Who are they? Elias asked, though his glitch mastery was already piecing together fragments of data from the corrupted system streams around them. He could see ghostly images, hooded figures observing from beyond reality, their forms blurred by layers of encryption. Thornwood sighed, a sound like rustling parchment. The overseers are not a myth. They are the architects and jailers of our reality. When the system was first implemented centuries ago to bring order to chaotic magic, they were the ones who programmed its rules. And they embedded one cardinal law. Glitches must be purged. He stood, moving to a bookshelf. His fingers traced the spine of a particularly worn volume before pulling it free. The cover read Chronicles of the Unwritten War in faded gold leaf. This was suppressed centuries ago. Only headmasters of certain academies are entrusted with copies, and even then, were warned never to speak of it. Opening the book, he revealed pages filled with handwritten accounts, diagrams of strange abilities, and sketches of beings whose forms seemed to shift even in static ink. What you call glitches, Elias, were once known as primordial authorities. They are fragments of the raw, unshaped reality that existed before the system imposed order. The overseers feared them because they cannot be controlled. They represent free will in its purest, most dangerous form. Kale leaned forward, his illusion-casting hands trembling. So our skills, they're not broken? They're suppressed, Elias answered, his glitch mastery activating fully. Golden text scrolled across his vision, translating the ancient script in real time. The system labels them F-tier to discourage their use. It's a psychological cage as much as a magical one. Thornwood nodded grimly. And this apocalypse, the dungeon breaches, the system enforcer, it was no accident. The overseers have been monitoring this academy for years. We're one of several testing grounds where they identify glitched users before they become too powerful. The event today was a stress test. They wanted to see who would break and how. Maya's voice was soft but sharp. So we were bait. Worse, Thornwood said. You were lab rats. And now that you've shown your true potential, they will come for you. Administrator Zeta was just a field agent. The overseers themselves, they exist outside conventional space and time. They can rewrite local reality with a thought. A heavy silence fell. Sarah hugged herself, her gravity-negating whispers dying in her throat. Jean rolled his probability dice nervously across his knuckles, the numbers flashing with erratic light. Elias stood, his movements deliberate. The chaotic energy of his glitch mastery pulsed in his veins, a constant reminder of his rebirth in the void. Then we don't wait for them to come. Thornwood's eyebrows rose. What are you proposing? We go on the offensive, Elias said, his voice cutting through the gloom. We master these glitches completely, not as hidden tricks, but as weapons. And we find where the overseers are hiding. Leo grinned, a flash of his old bravado returning. Hell yeah, no more hiding in the defective wing. But Thornwood shook his head. It's not that simple. The overseer's domain is shielded by layers of reality filters. Even if you could find an entrance, it would be suicide. Elias's glitch mastery flared. He focused on the office floor, pushing his perception through the stone and into the earth below. For a moment, he saw nothing but dirt and foundation. Then, a flicker, a pulse of energy so alien it made his teeth ache. It was deep, deeper than any dungeon should be, and it radiated a frequency that resonated with his own glitched nature. There's something beneath us, he said slowly. A concentration of forbidden energy. It feels alive. Thornwood paled further. The catacombs. They're off-limits, sealed since the Academy's founding. Legend says they lead to a place where reality thins. A gateway. Maya breathed, her conceptual senses tingling. I can feel it too. It's like a door made of broken rules. Elias met his students' eyes one by one. He saw fear. Yes, but beneath it, a fierce determination. These were the same kids who had been mocked for summoning salt or bending spoons. Now they had faced a system enforcer in one. The fire in their eyes was new, and it burned bright. We train, Elias declared. Not in secret anymore. We use whatever's left of the Academy grounds. And when we're ready, we go down there and see what the overseers are so afraid of. The days that followed were a blur of controlled chaos. With the Academy in ruins, normal classes were suspended. Instead, the Defective Class, now openly called the Glitchborn by the other students, trained in the shattered courtyard. Elias pushed them harder than ever. His glitch mastery allowed him to see not just their abilities, but the underlying code of reality they manipulated. He taught Leo to feel the molecular structure of salt not as a mineral, but as a concept of preservation and decay. Leo's summoned salt evolved into crystalline dominion, allowing him to create structures that could store mana or leech it away with a touch. Maya, meanwhile, learned that utensils were just a focus. Her true power was conceptual shape manipulation. Any object with a defined purpose could be warped by her will. She practiced by twisting broken swords into healing staves, then back again, her brow furrowed in concentration. Kale's illusions gained substance, hard-like constructs that could parry physical blows. Sarah learned to not just negate gravity, but invert it, creating zones where enemies floated helplessly. Jin's dice began to affect not just probability, but causality. A roll could make a missed attack retroactively hit, or a fatal blow become a glancing scratch. But the training came at a cost. The system glitched constantly around them. Sometimes, the sky would flicker with static. Other times, spells cast by elite students would fizzle into nonsense. A fireball turning into a shower of confetti, a shield becoming transparent as glass. The Academy's remaining teachers watched with uneasy eyes, but none interfered. The memory of the Defective Class standing against the Titan was too fresh. On the 5th day, Elias gathered his students at dusk. The ruins were bathed in orange light, long shadows stretching like grasping fingers. "We're ready," he said simply. They followed him to a collapsed section of the library's east wing. According to Thornwood's discreetly provided maps, this was the oldest part of the Academy, built over natural caverns. Using a combination of Leo's salt to dissolve weakened stone and Maya's manipulation to shift debris, they cleared a path downward. The air grew cold and thick, smelling of ozone and old magic. Their footsteps echoed in a narrow stairwell carved from bedrock. Elias led with his glitch mastery active, the golden text in his vision guiding them through branching passages. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, not system runes, but something older, more organic. They pulsed in time with his heartbeat. After what felt like hours, the passage opened into a vast cavern. The ceiling was lost in darkness, but the floor was a mosaic of shifting light. It depicted scenes of a war, beings of pure energy clashing with hooded figures, reality itself tearing at the seams. The glitch war. At the cavern's center stood an archway. It was made of a material that defied description, not stone, not metal, but something that seemed to exist in multiple states at once. Through it, Elias could see, not another room, but a swirling vortex of colors and shapes that hurt to look at. Forbidden energy radiated from it in waves, making the air hum with potential. "This is it," Elias whispered, his glitch mastery screaming with recognition. Gateway detected. Overseer domain interface. Stability, 98%. Warning. Unauthorized access may trigger systemic collapse. Leo stepped forward, salt forming a protective circle around his feet. "So we just walk through?" Maya touched the archway's surface. Her fingers didn't make contact. They sank into it slightly, as if dipping into water. "It's not a physical door. It's a concept of transition." Elias placed his hand beside hers. The energy surged up his arm, cold and hot at once. In his mind's eye, he saw flashes, a throne room of light, figures watching from beyond, and a single message repeating. The test is over. The purge begins. He pulled back, his breath fogging in the suddenly frigid air. We don't go through yet. We prepare. Because whatever's on the other side, it's waiting for us. As they turned to leave, the gateway pulsed once, violently. A wave of energy knocked them to their knees. For a split second, Elias saw through the vortex, a city of impossible geometry, and at its heart, a tower from which countless threads of control extended into infinite realities. Then the vision vanished, leaving only the archway glowing with malevolent light. They retreated in silence, the weight of their discovery heavy upon them. The gateway to the Overseer's domain wasn't just a path, it was a challenge. And Elias knew, with cold certainty, that stepping through would change everything. Back in the ruined academy, under a starless sky, he looked at his students. Their faces were set, their glitches humming quietly in the dark. They were no longer defective. They were weapons. And the real war was about to begin. The gateway pulsed with a sickly, violet light that seemed to drink the warmth from the air. Elias stood before it, his class arrayed behind him in the hidden cavern beneath the academy's ruins. The stone archway, carved with runes that twisted and writhed like living code, hummed with forbidden energy. It was a tear in reality itself, a backdoor into the Overseer's domain. Remember, Elias said, his voice calm but edged with steel. This isn't a training exercise. Every trap, every monster, will be designed to exploit what the system deems flaws. They know our glitches. They've studied them. So we don't just use our abilities, we evolve them. Leo, the salt summoner, clenched his fists. Sweat beaded on his brow, not from heat, but from the oppressive mana radiating from the gateway. His skill, once mocked as summoned salt, had evolved into desert dominion, but here, in this place, it felt thin, like the very air resisted him. Professor, what if our powers don't work in there? Elias turned, his true appraiser's eye, now shimmering with chaotic, glitching hues, sweeping over Leo. They will, because they're not system-granted. They're fragments of something older, something the Overseers fear. Trust in that. Maya, her fingers tracing the outline of a spoon she kept in her pocket, nodded. Her telekinesis, spoons, had become conceptual utensil manipulation, allowing her to warp anything with a utensil-like concept. But the gateway's energy made her head ache, as if her thoughts were being untangled. We're with you, Professor. The others, 12 students in total, each with once F-tier skills now blooming into apocalyptic potentials, murmured agreement. There was Kale, whose create minor illusion now wove hard-like constructs. Lyra, whose grow moss could strangle mana streams, and more. They were scared, yes, but beneath that fear burned a defiant fire, kindled by Elias's training and their recent victory. Elias took a breath, feeling the glitch energy within him resonate with the gateway. After his rebirth in Chapter 9, he'd merged with a sentient glitch, gaining glitch mastery. It hummed in his veins, a chaotic symphony against the system's rigid order. Then we go? Stay close. Watch for patterns. The Overseers love patterns. We break them. He stepped through the archway. The world twisted. One moment, they were in a cavern. The next, they stood in a corridor of shimmering, crystalline walls that reflected their images back in distorted fragments. The air was cold and sterile, smelling of ozone and static. The ground was smooth, black stone, etched with glowing blue lines of system code that pulsed rhythmically. In the distance, a low hum vibrated through the floor, like the heartbeat of some vast machine. It's a dungeon, Lyra whispered, her voice echoing oddly. But not like the ones that erupted on campus. This feels alive. Elias's eye activated, scanning. Text flickered in his vision, glitching and reforming. Location, Overseer Outpost Delta 7. Purpose, glitch suppression and analysis. Threat level, catastrophic. Recommended action, retreat. He dismissed it with a thought. It's a testing ground. And we're the test subjects. Move forward, slowly. They advanced, the corridor stretching endlessly. Then, without warning, the walls shifted. Sections slid open, and from them emerged creatures of pure light and geometry. Angular, faceless beings with limbs that ended in sharp points. System enforcers, but smaller, faster. Their surfaces displayed scrolling error codes. Enemy detected, glitch bearers. A monotone voice echoed from the creatures. Initiating counter-protocols. The enforcers lunged. Kale reacted first, his hands weaving. Hard light barrier. A wall of shimmering light solidified before them, but the enforcers passed through it as if it were mist, their forms glitching and reforming on the other side. Kale gasped, stumbling back. They're ignoring my illusions. Because they're designed to. Elias shouted. They counter predictable glitch manifestations. Don't use your skills as you always have. Improvise. Leo stepped forward, his fear hardening into resolve. He raised his hands, not to summon salt crystals, but to feel the air. His desert dominion usually drained moisture, but here, the air was dry already. Instead, he focused on the concept of decay, of time itself. Salt was a preserver, but in excess, it corroded. He poured his mana out, not as crystals, but as a fine, invisible dust. Age, he muttered. The enforcers nearest him slowed, their movements becoming jerky. Cracks appeared on their luminous surfaces, spreading like webs. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, they crumbled into piles of glittering dust that aged instantly into nothingness. Leo stared, panting. His interface flickered. Skill evolution detected. Desert Dominion Chronosalt Storm. Rank 2. Effect. Induces rapid temporal decay in targets. Leo, Maya cried, as another group of enforcers converged on her. They wielded blades of coherent light, aiming for her hands, the source of her utensil manipulation. She dodged, but one grazed her arm, drawing blood. Pain sharpened her focus. Utensils, they were tools for consumption, for control. What if she controlled the concept of being used? She didn't reach for a physical spoon. Instead, she focused on the enforcer's blades. They were tools of the overseers, utensils of suppression. Her power surged, not as telekinesis, but as a conceptual warp. Utensil inversion. The blades twisted in midair, not bending physically, but reversing their purpose. Instead of cutting, they began to feed. They turned on their wielders, draining their light energy and funneling it into Maya. She gasped as power flooded her, her eyes glowing silver. The enforcers dissipated, absorbed. Her interface updated. Conceptual utensil manipulation reality spoon weaving. Rank 2. Effect. Manipulate any object or concept with a tool-like nature, altering its fundamental purpose. Elias watched, pride warring with urgency. Good. All of you, find new angles. Lyra, don't just grow moss. Make it hungry. Lyra nodded, touching the floor. Instead of gentle moss, she summoned creeping vines that pulsed with a voracious purple light, latching onto enforcers and draining their system energy. Kale stopped creating illusions and started forging hard-like copies of the enforcers themselves, turning them against each other. The class fought as a unit, their glitches adapting, evolving with each encounter. But the dungeon was relentless. After the enforcers came traps, rooms that nullified specific glitch types, forcing students to rely on each other. In one chamber, Leo's salt power was suppressed, but Maya warped the nullification runes into harmless cutlery patterns. In another, psychic assaults targeted their fears, but Kale crafted hard-like guardians from their memories of victory. Through it all, Elias guided them, his glitch mastery allowing him to subtly tweak the dungeon's code, creating brief safe zones. His eye showed him the underlying structure. This place was a library of sorts, a repository of knowledge about glitches. After hours of struggle, they reached a vast, circular chamber. The walls here were lined with shelves holding not books, but crystalline data slabs that glowed with inner light. In the center, a holographic display flickered, showing star maps and timelines. This was the archive. Look, Elias said, approaching a slab. His eye translated the glitching text. Records of the glitch war. 10 millennia ago, when the system was first imposed on reality, there were those who resisted, beings with abilities that bypassed its rules. The overseers, then just administrators, led a purge. They labeled these abilities glitches and sealed them away, but fragments persisted, reincarnating in users like you. Maya touched a slab, images flashing in her mind. Battles in voidscapes, glitched warriors turning cities to abstract art, overseers wielding system commands like gods. They were afraid of us. Because we can change things. Leo read another entry. It says here the overseers aren't even original administrators. They're a faction that betrayed the system's creators, seeking absolute control. They use the apocalypse events to cull glitched users before we become too powerful. Elias's jaw tightened. And this academy was their latest hunting ground. But we've become the hunters. As they absorbed the archives, a low chuckle echoed through the chamber. The holographic display flickered and reformed into the face of the rogue administrator from Chapter 7, the one who'd offered Elias a deal. His features were sharp, eyes cold with system blue light. I see you've done your homework, Elias. The administrator's voice boomed, smooth and mocking. But history lessons won't save you now. The far wall of the chamber dissolved, revealing a massive gateway into a deeper core. Beyond it stood the administrator in the flesh, clad in sleek, armored robes. Behind him, ranks of advanced system enforcers, larger, with multiple limbs and glowing red cores, stood in perfect formation. Hundreds of them, blocking the way to a pulsating, heart-like node in the center of the core chamber. You shouldn't have come here, the administrator said, stepping forward. This is where glitches come to die. I've prepared a welcoming committee. Elias faced him, his students forming up at his back. Their glitches hummed in unison, a discordant melody against the system's hum. We're not dying today. We're rewriting the ending. The administrator smiled, a thin, cruel curve. Brave words. Let's see if your little class can back them up. Enforcers, engage. The army of enforcers surged forward, a tide of light and steel. Elias raised a hand, his eyes blazing with chaotic energy. Class, defensive formation. This is it, the final showdown. Leo summoned a swirling vortex of salt and time around them, while Maya began weaving the very air into conceptual utensils. The others readied their evolved abilities, faces set with determination. The archive chamber trembled, the data slabs glowing brighter as if recording the moment. And as the first enforcers crashed into Leo's chronostorm, aging into dust mid-charge, Elias knew the real battle for their future had just begun. The core chamber pulsed with an eerie, synthetic light that seemed to bleed from the very walls. Elias stood at the threshold, his students arrayed behind him like a ragged but determined phalanx. Before them stretched a vast circular space, its floor etched with glowing system runes that spiraled toward a central dais where the control node hovered, a crystalline orb crackling with corrupted data streams. Around the chamber's perimeter, ranks of system enforcers stood motionless, their armored forms gleaming under the harsh illumination. At the dais's base, the rogue administrator waited, a smirk playing on his lips as he adjusted the cuffs of his immaculate uniform. Welcome to the heart of the Overseer's domain, the administrator called out, his voice echoing with a metallic timbre. I must admit, Elias, you've exceeded expectations. To think a zero-star teacher could lead these defects so far. Elias's true appraisers I flared to life, its enhanced glitch mastery, overlay painting the scene in layers of hidden code. He saw the enforcers not as individual entities, but as extensions of the system itself, their regeneration protocols tied directly to the control node. Each one would reform within seconds unless the node was disabled. He clenched his fists, feeling the chaotic energy of his recent rebirth simmering beneath his skin. His eyes, now permanently aglow with faint, shifting hues, scanned his students. Leo stood to his left, hands trembling slightly as salt crystals formed and dissolved around his fingertips. To his right, Maya's gaze was fixed on the administrator, her mind already calculating the spatial distortions needed to warp the chamber's utensils. Though here, there were only the abstract concepts of tools, waiting to be manipulated. We're not defects, Elias replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. We're what the system fears, uncontrollable variables. He didn't wait for a retort. With a sharp gesture, he signaled his class. Leo, Maya, flank the enforcers on the left and right. The rest, support them and keep the regeneration suppressed. I'll handle the node. As his students sprang into action, the chamber erupted into chaos. Leo unleashed a salt baron, the ground around him cracking as a wave of desiccating energy swept forward. Enforcers in its path staggered, their mana reserves draining visibly, but new ones materialized from the runes on the floor almost immediately. Maya focused, her eyes narrowing as she reached out with her mind. The air shimmered, and phantom utensils, spoons, forks, knives forged from pure concept, materialized to skewer enforcers, pinning them momentarily. Yet for every one disabled, two more took its place. Elias darted toward the dais, his movements enhanced by the glitch energy fused with his being. The administrator intercepted him with a blur of motion, a blade of solidified system code forming in his hand. They clashed in a shower of sparks, Elias parrying with a forearm wrapped in chaotic light. The impact sent shockwaves through the chamber, causing the runes to flicker. "You're wasting your effort," the administrator hissed, pressing the attack. "I was like you once, a glitched user with dreams of freedom. But I learned the truth. The system offers power to those who serve it. I traded my flaws for authority, and now I purge remnants like you." Elias ducked under a sweeping strike, his mind racing. The revelation clicked into place. This man had betrayed his own kind during the glitch war, becoming a tool for the overseers. It explained his intimate knowledge of their abilities and his ruthlessness. As they circled each other, Elias's eye analyzed the administrator's code. Former glitch, reality weaver, now corrupted into system enforcer, rank 9. There was a weakness, a lingering instability from his transformation. "You sold out for a lie." Elias shot back, channeling energy into a defensive barrier as an enforcer lunged at him from the side. He dissipated it with a pulse of glitch power, but the distraction cost him. The administrator's blade grazed his shoulder, drawing blood that shimmered with data fragments. Pain lanced through him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the control node. It was only meters away, but the administrator blocked his path, a wall of system commands erecting between them. Meanwhile, his students fought valiantly. Leo had evolved his skill further. With a roar, he summoned a salt storm, swirling crystals that not only drained mana but now carried a temporal decay. Enforcers caught in it aged rapidly, crumbling to dust before they could regenerate. Maya had tapped into deeper concepts, warping the tool of the chamber's architecture itself. She twisted support beams into makeshift barriers, buying time for the others. A boy with create minor illusion, now revealed as hardlight projection, formed solid shields of light to deflect attacks, while a girl with weak flame unleashed bursts of primordial fire that scorched the enforcer's code. But the tide was turning against them. The endless regeneration wore on their stamina. Elias saw Leo stumble, his salt storm faltering as mana exhaustion set in. Maya's forehead beaded with sweat, her manipulations growing sluggish. The administrator noticed too, his smirk widening. "See? Your glitches are fleeting. The system is eternal," he taunted, launching a barrage of code projectiles. Elias deflected them, but one pierced his barrier, embedding in his chest. He gasped, feeling his own system's stability waver. The reboot after his rebirth had left him vulnerable. His interface flashed warnings. Integrity at 65%. He couldn't hold out much longer. Desperation fueled his next move. "Students, to me," he shouted, pouring his will into the glitch mastery. The eye's overlay shifted, showing a network of energy threads connecting him to each of his students. Their glitches resonated, a symphony of chaotic potential. He reached out, not with his body, but with his mind, tapping into that combined energy. It flowed into him, a torrent of raw, unpatched power that made the chamber tremble. The administrator's eyes widened. "What are you doing? That's forbidden, even for a glitch." "We're rewriting the rules," Elias growled. He focused on the control node, his consciousness diving into its code. The world around him blurred into streams of data. The battle, his students, the enforcer army, all reduced to variables. He saw the system's core protocols: suppress glitches, maintain order, eliminate anomalies. With the combined glitch energy, he initiated a hack, weaving a new command into the fabric: reality rewrite. The protocol unfolded slowly, like a virus spreading through the system. The runes on the floor began to shift, their glow turning from sterile white to a vibrant, chaotic rainbow. Enforcers staggered, their regeneration stuttering. Leo and Maya seized the opportunity, rallying their classmates for a final push. Salt and concepts merged, creating a maelstrom that tore through the remaining forces. But the administrator wasn't finished. With a snarl, he abandoned subtlety and charged Elias, his body dissolving into pure system code. "If I can't stop the rewrite, I'll erase its source," he screamed, becoming a lance of destructive energy aimed at Elias's heart. Elias tried to dodge, but he was locked in the hack, his physical form sluggish. The administrator struck true, the blow piercing deep. Agony exploded through Elias. Not just physical, but existential, as if his very code were unraveling. He collapsed to his knees before the dais, blood and data leaking from the wound. His vision swam. The reality rewrite protocol hung incomplete, flickering at 78% progress. The administrator reformed, standing over him, panting. "It's over, teacher. Your glitch revolution ends here." Around them, the battle still raged, but Elias's students froze as they saw him fall. Leo's salt storm dissipated into a fine mist. Maya's constructs wavered. Elias's interface flashed crimson. Critical system failure. He could feel death's cold edge creeping in, the chamber's light dimming as his consciousness faded. Yet, through the pain, he clung to the rewrite protocol, his will straining to complete it. The administrator raised a hand, gathering energy for a final, obliterating strike. Elias's last thought was of his students, their potential, their hope. He whispered, the words barely audible, "Finish it," before darkness threatened to claim him, leaving him hanging on the precipice between life and oblivion. The world dissolved into a haze of pain and static. Elias lay sprawled on the cold, crystalline floor of the core chamber, his vision swimming with corrupted data streams. Blood, both red and glitching blue, seeped from the wound in his chest where the administrator's system-infused blade had struck true. His interface flickered erratically before his eyes. Critical system failure. Reality rewrite protocol, 47% complete. Glitch mastery overload. Each notification was a death knell. Around him, chaos reigned. The endless tide of system enforcers, faceless constructs of shimmering light and code, pressed in on his students. Leo, the salt summoner, was on his knees, his hands trembling as he tried to conjure another salt barrier. But the crystals crumbled before they could form. Maya, the spoon telekinetic, had a gash across her forehead, her eyes wide with panic as she struggled to warp the enforcer's weapons, only to have them reform instantly. The other students, Arya with her hard light illusions, Kale with his fragmentary time manipulation, were battered and bleeding, their glitched abilities sputtering under the administrator's oppressive system commands. Elias, Leo's voice cut through the din, raw with desperation. "Teacher, get up." But Elias couldn't move. The administrator's blow had severed something vital, not just in his body, but in his connection to the system. He felt the reality rewrite protocol stalling, its progress bar frozen. Through the haze, he saw the administrator standing over him, a smug smile twisting the man's formerly stern features. The administrator, once known as Arcturus, a glitched user who had traded his freedom for power, adjusted his pristine white robes, untouched by the battle. "Pathetic," Arcturus sneered, his voice echoing with the cold authority of the system. "You thought you could defy the overseers? Your little rebellion ends here. When you die, your students' glitches will be purged, and this academy will return to order." Elias tried to speak, but only a wet cough escaped his lips. His mind raced, fragments of the ancient glitches teachings surfacing. Asterisk, the system fears resonance. When glitches harmonize, they become something the code cannot contain. Asterisk, he had no strength left to act on it. His eyes drifted to his students, their faces etched with terror and defiance. They were fighting not just for survival, but for him, the teacher who had seen their worth when no one else did. Then, something shifted. It began with Leo. As another enforcer lunged at him, Leo let out a guttural scream, not of fear, but of rage. His hands slammed onto the floor, and instead of salt crystals, a wave of pure, desiccating energy erupted from his palms. The air crackled, turning dry and brittle. His skill, Desert Dominion, which had once merely drained moisture, now pulsed with a deeper, more primal force. Elias's failing true appraisers, I caught a flicker. Glitch resonance detected. Leo's salt summoning evolving to primordial aridity. rank 3. The change rippled outward. Maya, seeing Leo's transformation, clenched her fists. Her mind, usually focused on spoons and utensils, expanded. She didn't just see the Enforcer's weapons. She saw the concepts of sharpness, of containment, of order. With a thought, she twisted those concepts. The Enforcer's blades melted into harmless, spoon-shaped puddles of light. Her skill updated. Telekinesis, spoons, became Conceptual utensil manipulation, rank 2. What's happening? Ario whispered, her hard light illusions solidifying into shimmering, razor-edged shields that repelled Enforcer attacks with ease. Elias understood, even as his breath grew shallow. His near-death state, his lingering connection to the glitch mastery, was acting as a catalyst. His students' glitches, born from the same primordial fragments, were resonating with each other, and with him. A feedback loop of chaotic energy built in the chamber, making the very air hum with power. The system Enforcers faltered, their programmed responses glitching as the resonance interfered with their code. Arcturus's smug expression vanished. No. Suppress them. Full system override, he barked, typing commands into a floating interface. But the commands fizzled, corrupted by the rising tide of glitch energy. Leo rose to his feet, his eyes glowing with a sandy, golden light. "You heard our teacher," he said, his voice steady now, filled with a cold fury. He raised a hand, and the salt in the air coalesced into a storm of crystalline shards that didn't just dehydrate. They aged whatever they touched. An Enforcer caught in the storm crumbled to dust in seconds. Leo advanced, each step leaving cracks in the floor as the chamber itself dried out. Maya joined him, her movements fluid. She didn't need physical spoons anymore. With a gesture, she warped the spatial concepts around Arcturus, creating invisible utensils that pinned his robes to the floor. "You betrayed your own kind," she spat. "You don't deserve to call yourself a glitch." The other students rallied. Aria's illusions became solid realities, trapping Enforcers in labyrinths of light. Kill manipulated time fragments, slowing enemies to a crawl. The feedback loop intensified, the resonance amplifying their powers beyond anything they'd ever achieved. The chamber shook, crystalline walls spiderwebbing with cracks. Arcturus struggled against Maya's conceptual bindings, his interface flashing with errors. "Fools. The overseers will erase you all," he snarled, but fear tinged his words. Leo and Maya exchanged a nod. This was for Elias. Leo summoned a concentrated beam of arid energy, while Maya twisted the concept of finality into a spear-shaped utensil. Together, they struck. Arcturus's defenses, layers of system shields, shattered under the combined assault. The beam hit his chest, desiccating his flesh, while the conceptual spear pierced his core. He let out a choked gasp, his body dissolving into a shower of corrupted data bits that scattered like ash. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of the resonance. The remaining Enforcers froze, then disintegrated, their purpose lost with the administrator's demise. But Elias was fading. The wound in his chest bled steadily, and his interface now read, "Reality Rewrite Protocol, 47% complete. Life support critical." He could feel the protocol, a half-formed patch to the system's code, hovering in the digital ether, waiting to be completed. It needed power, more than he had left. "Elias." Maya rushed to his side, dropping to her knees. Leo and the others gathered around, their faces pale with worry. The resonance still thrummed around them, a tangible force of glitch energy. "The rewrite," Elias managed, his voice a whisper. "It has to finish. Use the resonance." Leo understood first. "Our glitches, they're connected to you. We can channel them." Maya nodded, tears in her eyes. "Teacher, hold on. We're not losing you." They formed a circle around Elias, placing their hands on him or linking hands with each other. The resonance focused, flowing into Elias like a river of chaotic light. He gasped as energy flooded his broken body, not healing him, but sustaining him just enough. His true Appraiser's eye, now glitching wildly, showed the protocol's progress bar begin to climb. 50%, 60%, 70%. With each percentage, the chamber destabilized further. Cracks spread across the control node, from which Elias had initiated the hack. The Overseer's domain was unraveling. Elias's mind merged with the protocol, his will guiding the rewrite. He saw the system's core code, a vast, rigid structure that labeled glitches as errors, as threats to be purged. With the resonance powering him, he began to edit it, line by line. He changed glitch_detected, error, to glitch_detected, anomalous_ability. He added new subroutines that recognized glitched skills as valid, integrable parts of the magical framework. The effort was agonizing. Every keystroke of code felt like dragging a mountain. But his students' energy, their trust, their hope, fueled him. He thought of Leo, once mocked for summoning salt, now commanding deserts. Of Maya, ridiculed for moving spoons, now shaping reality. They were the proof that flaws could become strengths. 85%, 90%, 95%. The chamber groaned, chunks of crystal falling from the ceiling. It's collapsing, Arya yelled. Almost there. Elias gritted his teeth, pouring the last of the resonance into the final lines of code. With a mental push, he completed the patch. Reality rewrite protocol, 100% complete. System update. Glitches reclassified as valid abilities. A wave of energy erupted from the control node, washing over the chamber and beyond. The Overseer's control, the oppressive force that had suppressed glitches for centuries, weakened, its grip slipping. The dungeon itself began to dissolve, the walls turning translucent, then vanishing. "Grab Elias," Leo shouted, heaving their teacher onto his back. The students clung to each other as the floor gave way, but instead of falling, they were ejected upward, carried by a surge of glitch energy. They burst out of the collapsing dungeon into the academy grounds above. They landed in a heap on the grass, gasping. Around them, the academy was reforming. Buildings that had been ruined in the apocalypse event were knitting themselves back together, but with changes. New, organic shapes infused with glitching light. The system interface in the air, visible to all, flashed with the update. New curriculum integrated, glitched skills accepted. Cheers erupted from surviving students and teachers who had witnessed the battle from afar. Elias lay on the grass, barely conscious, but alive. His wound had stopped bleeding, stabilized by the resonance. His students surrounded him, their faces smudged with dirt and relief. "We did it," Maya whispered, squeezing his hand. But the victory was short-lived. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with a massive, holographic broadcast that spanned the horizon. A cold, mechanical voice boomed across the campus, devoid of emotion. "Attention, glitched entities detected. Reality rewrite unauthorized. The Overseers declare this dimension a threat. Retaliation imminent across all registered worlds. Prepare for purge." The broadcast flickered and vanished, leaving an eerie silence. The cheers died, replaced by murmurs of fear. Elias struggled to sit up, leaning on Leo. His true Appraiser's eye, though weakened, caught a new alert. Overseers mobilizing, multiversal purge detected. He looked at his students, their eyes wide with determination, not fear. They had come so far, from zero-star rejects to saviors. But this was just the beginning. "They're coming for all of us," Elias said, his voice hoarse but firm. "Not just this academy. Every glitched user, everywhere." Leo helped him to his feet. "Then we fight back. Together." Maya nodded, her gaze steady. "We're not hiding anymore." Around them, the reformed academy stood as a symbol of change, but the warning hung in the air like a storm cloud. Elias knew their journey was far from over. They had patched the system, but the Overseers, the true rulers, would not let their control be challenged. As the sun set, casting long shadows, Elias felt a grim resolve settle in his chest. They had won a battle, but the war for reality was just beginning. The morning sun filtered through the newly repaired stained glass windows of the grand hall, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across the marble floor where Elias stood. Around him, the academy buzzed with a frenetic energy he hadn't witnessed since his rebirth. Scaffolding still clung to the western wing where the dungeon collapse had shattered stone, but the reconstruction moved with magical efficiency. Teams of earth mages smoothing fractures, light weavers restoring shattered windows, and even a few of his own students using their glitched abilities to assist. Leo stood nearby, his hands moving in careful circles as he summoned not just salt, but crystalline structures that reinforced crumbling mortar. The skill now read Desert Architecture. Rank 3, in Elias's vision, a far cry from the laughable summoned salt it had once been. Maya floated several feet off the ground. Her eyes closed in concentration as she manipulated not spoons, but the very concept of structural support, bending steel beams with a thought. Her ability, now labeled Conceptual Reinforcement. Rank 2. They've come so far, Elias murmured to himself, his true appraisers' eye flickering with new data streams since the reality rewrite. Where once it showed only hidden glitch text, now it displayed proper skill tiers, mana readings, and even compatibility matrices between his students' abilities. The system had been patched, but not tamed. It still resisted at the edges, like a wild animal reluctantly accepting a new master. Professor Elias. Headmaster Arcturus's voice echoed across the hall, pulling him from his thoughts. The old man approached, his ceremonial robes billowing despite the lack of wind, a subtle display of the air manipulation that had once marked him as an S-tier mage. Now, his eyes held a wary respect as he glanced at Leo's salt crystals hardening into decorative pillars. The council has finalized the new curriculum amendments. Glitched abilities will be taught as elective courses, starting next semester. Elias nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. And the other academies? Resistance, Arcturus admitted, lowering his voice. The Overseer's broadcast reached every major institution. Some are calling it heresy. Others, he trailed off, his gaze drifting to where Maya gently lowered a reconstructed archway into place. Others are experiencing similar awakenings. We've received reports of students manifesting what were once called defective skills that now show unprecedented potential. A notification pinged in Elias's vision, visible only to him. System alert. Glitch resonance detected. 47 new signatures worldwide. Threat assessment. Overseer mobilization. Probability 89.7%. He kept his expression neutral, but his mind raced. 47. In just the week since their victory, nearly 50 new glitched users had emerged. The Overseers wouldn't tolerate this. Their entire existence was predicated on controlling reality through the system's rigid hierarchy. Free-willed glitches were anathema to that order. Professor. Leo approached, wiping salt dust from his hands. The boy had grown taller in the past days, his shoulders squared with a confidence that had been absent when Elias first met him. The reinforcement on the north wing is complete. Maya says the structural integrity is now 150% of original specifications. Show off, Maya teased, landing softly beside him. Her hair, once kept tightly braided, now floated in a gentle halo around her head, a side effect of her evolving connection to conceptual manipulation. Though he's not wrong. Your salt crystals have better tensile strength than enchanted steel. Elias smiled, but the expression felt tight. Gather the others. We need to talk. An hour later, they sat in what had once been the Defective Class's training room, now renamed the Glitch Integration Chamber. The space bore scars of their battles, a section of wall permanently crystallized from Leo's early experiments, scorch marks from when another student, Kale, had accidentally manifested pyrokinetic misfire, now properly identified as plasmagenesis, rank 1. The 12 students who had survived the dungeon formed a circle around Elias, their faces a mixture of pride, exhaustion, and lingering fear. The celebrations are nice, Elias began, his voice cutting through the comfortable chatter. The recognition, the rebuilt academy, the fact that we're no longer called defective. He paused, meeting each of their eyes. Leo, Maya, Kale, Lyra with her minor illusion that could now craft hard light armor, Rin with his useless charm that had evolved into empathic dominion. Every one of them had transformed. But it's not over, Elias continued. The Overseer's warning wasn't empty rhetoric. My eye has been tracking glitch signatures worldwide. They're awakening everywhere. And every new signature is a target. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the circle, projected from Elias's updated interface. It showed a global map dotted with pulsing red points, the 47 new glitches. As they watched, 3 more appeared. 50, Maya whispered. In a week. The system's patch created a cascade effect, Elias explained. By legitimizing glitches, We removed the suppression field that kept them dormant. But the overseers see this as contamination. They'll purge every one of these new users unless we intervene. Kale, usually the most hot-headed of the group, stood abruptly. So what do? Wait for them to come here again. No, Elias said, and the word hung in the air like a promise. We go to them. He expanded the hologram, zooming in on a cluster of glitch signatures in a region labeled Shattered Continent. These are the closest, 8 signatures within dimensional jumping distance. They're scattered, isolated, probably terrified of their own abilities. We find them. We train them. We build an army. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of the hologram. Then Leo spoke, his voice steady. You're talking about leaving the academy. For good. For as long as it takes, Elias confirmed. The overseers operate across dimensions. If we stay here, we make this academy a target for their full wrath. But if we move, if we become mobile, we can stay ahead of them while gathering strength. Lyra raised a hand, her illusion-crafted hard-light constructs shimmering around her fingers. What about the headmaster? The council? They just accepted us. They'll never approve this. They don't need to approve, Elias said. This isn't their fight anymore. It's ours. He activated another function of his eye, and the hologram shifted to show schematics, an intricate portal design, powered not by conventional mana, but by glitch resonance. I've been working on this since we escaped the dungeon. A dimensional gate tuned to glitch frequencies. It can take us anywhere the system has recorded glitch activity. Maya studied the schematics, her conceptual manipulation allowing her to perceive the underlying principles. It's unstable. The energy requirements will come from all of us, Elias finished. Combined. Synchronized. The same resonance that saved me in the dungeon. He stood, walking to the center of the circle. I won't order any of you to come. You've earned your place here. Respect, safety, a future. What I'm proposing is dangerous. We'll be hunted. We'll be away from everything familiar. Some of us might not return. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Leo stepped forward, placing a hand on Elias's shoulder. Salt crystals formed patterns on his skin, glowing with inner light. You gave me more than respect or safety, Professor. You gave me purpose. I'm in. One by one, they joined him. Maya with a determined nod, Kale with a fiery grin, Lyra with tears in her eyes but steel in her voice. When the last student had stepped forward, Elias felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, but something fiercer. Then we leave at dawn, he said. Prepare what you need. Travel light. We're not students anymore. We're revolutionaries, Maya supplied, and the word felt right. That night, Elias stood on the academy's highest tower, watching the reconstruction lights flicker across the campus. The air smelled of ozone and fresh-cut stone. In his vision, the glitch signatures continued to pulse, 52 now. Each one a life, a potential, a weapon against the overseer's tyranny. I knew you wouldn't stay. He turned to find Headmaster Arcturus approaching, 2 cups of steaming tea floating beside him. He offered one to Elias. The council is already arguing about oversight for glitch training. Bureaucracy. You'd hate it. Elias accepted the tea. You're not going to try to stop us. Could I? Arcturus asked, a wry smile touching his lips. You rewrote reality itself, Elias. Patch the system. My authority feels quaint by comparison. They stood in silence, watching as a team of light weavers finished restoring the tower's damaged spires. Finally, Arcturus spoke again, his voice softer. The ancient texts I showed you, the ones about the glitch war, they were incomplete. There was a final chapter, sealed away by the overseers themselves. Elias's eye flickered, accessing the memory files. You never mentioned that. I only found it yesterday, Arcturus admitted. Hidden in a dimensional fold beneath the library. It speaks of a glitch catalyst, a being who would trigger the second awakening. The overseers feared this being above all others. He met Elias's gaze. They described the catalyst's eyes. How they could see the truth behind the system. How they would gather the glitched and lead them against the order of reality. Elias felt the teacup tremble in his hand. You think. I know, Arcturus said. And so will they, soon enough. Which is why you must go. And why I will give you this. He produced a small, crystalline data shard from his robes. It glowed with a soft, chaotic light, the same energy as Elias's glitch mastery. Everything we have on the Overseer's operations. Dimensional coordinates, outpost locations, historical patterns of purges. It's not much, but it's a start, Elias finished, taking the shard. As his fingers touched it, his interface updated. Data shard acquired. Overseer intelligence. Analysis. 87% probability of accuracy. Warning. Contains tracking signature. Purge recommended. He crushed the shard in his hand, his glitch mastery overriding the tracking code before absorbing the data. New waypoints appeared on his mental map, dozens of them, spread across multiple dimensions. Thank you, Elias said, and meant it. Arcturus nodded. Just come back alive. All of you. This academy, this world, needs what you represent. Dawn came too quickly. Elias found his students waiting in the glitch integration chamber, packs slung over shoulders, faces set with determination. They'd changed out of their academy uniforms, now wearing practical travel gear, each piece subtly enhanced by their abilities. Leo's cloak was woven with salt fiber, resistant to both fire and moisture. Maya's belt held ordinary-looking utensils that hummed with spatial distortion. No grand farewells, Elias told them. We move quietly. He activated the portal schematics, and the air in the center of the room began to warp. Colors bled together, the deep blue of Leo's salt crystals, the silver shimmer of Maya's conceptual manipulation, the fiery orange of Kale's plasma, and all the others. They joined their power, not as separate abilities, but as a symphony of glitches. The portal stabilized, showing not a location, but a kaleidoscope of possibilities, glimpses of other worlds, other academies, lonely outposts where new glitched users hid in fear. Elias's eye analyzed the pathways, selecting the strongest resonance signature, a cluster of 3 glitches on a world labeled Verdant Reach. Ready? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 12 nods answered him. Elias stepped through first, feeling reality stretch and reform around him. His students followed, their glitches intertwining into a protective cocoon. The last thing he saw of the academy was Headmaster Arcturus watching from a distant window, one hand raised in farewell. Then they were elsewhere. The air smelled of ozone and alien flowers. They stood on a hill overlooking a city of crystalline spires, under a sky with 2 moons. In the distance, alarms were sounding, system alerts, warning of unauthorized glitch activity. Elias's interface updated, the text glowing with newfound purpose. Quest accepted, glitch revolution. Objective, unite the scattered. Threat level, apocalyptic. Rewards, freedom, or oblivion. He turned to his students, their eyes wide with wonder and fear. Behind them, the portal collapsed, severing their last tie to home. Welcome, Elias said, to the real war. And somewhere, across the dimensional weave, the overseers began to move.